Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're heading somewhere most of us wouldn't last even until lunch. The American frontier in the 1870s. No Wi-Fi, no lattes, no gym memberships, protein shakes, or air-conditioned bedrooms. Just wood smoke mornings, rough hands, cold nights, and chores that start before sunrise and don't politely end. Ever. Forget the Hollywood version. Slick cowboys in spotless jackets, riding into the sunset with perfect hair and dramatic violins. No, tonight we're stepping into the real frontier, the one that smelled like sweat, dust, livestock, and desperation, and where comfort usually meant didn't get frostbite today. Homes weren't spacious ranch houses, they were cramped log boxes, shared with family, travelers, strangers, and sometimes livestock, because insulation wasn't exactly a thing yet. Before we get cozy, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this calm, mildly weird way of learning history while winding down for sleep. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. Somehow it's always 2 a.m. for somebody out there. Usually the guy who said, just one more YouTube video. Now dim your lights, get under a blanket, maybe turn on a fan or a fireplace sound. Whatever makes you feel safe and warm and indoors, because trust me, you're going to be very grateful you're not outside in 1873 Wyoming right now. Let's take a moment and think about it. Have you ever wondered what frontier life actually felt like? Not the romantic cowboy fantasy, but the daily reality. What did it smell like to wake up in a single-room cabin with 6 other people and a damp wool blanket that hadn't been washed since Ulysses S. Grant's first term in office? What did food taste like when everything depended on weather, luck, and how sharp your axe was? And honestly, how did people survive without toothpaste, plumbing, or painkillers stronger than whiskey and hope? Tonight we'll find out. So tuck your feet in, not because there are rats in your room, but because frontier mice had attitude, and imagining one nibbling your socks is somehow worse than a pirate rat ever could be. Take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders. Let the modern world fade away, and prepare to step into a place where life was harder, harsher, and somehow humbler, and where your modern body wouldn't stand a chance. Let's travel back to dirt floors, smoky cabins, and a kind of toughness we've mostly forgotten. Chapter 1. Inside the Frontier Cabin. The first thing you notice is the air. It greets you before your eyes even open, thick, heavy, and almost chewy, like you could reach out and pinch it between your fingers. There is no crisp morning breeze, no hint of clean linen or freshly washed wooden floors. Instead, your lungs fill with a stew of humanity and hard living. The sour musk of unwashed bodies, the earthy staleness of damp wool, the faint but undeniable bite of animal waste, and beneath it all, a damp, sour note of sewage, lingering like a ghost that refuses to leave. You inhale because you must, and suddenly you can taste the room. A mix of sweat, smoke, livestock, and yesterday's dinner scraped hastily into the corner. On the frontier, waste isn't neatly whisked away down hidden pipes. It settles. It stays. It seeps into the ground outside and sometimes finds its way back in. Everything floats together, and there is nowhere else for it to go. Your eyes open slowly to dim, grainy morning light, pushing through the cracks in the rough-hewn cabin walls. Dust hangs in the beams of sun like suspended snow. Only here, in this place, it never melts. It drifts in your breath, settles in your hair, and nestles deep into the wool blankets that have not been washed in months, maybe longer. The cabin is cramped, tighter than any apartment you've ever known. One room, 4 walls, a roof that creaks and sighs in the wind like an old man settling sore bones. Every sound echoes. The rustle of fabric, the low crackle of dying embers in the hearth, the quiet grunt of someone still asleep nearby. Privacy is a luxury that hasn't been invented yet, not out here. Bodies sleep close for warmth, not just family, sometimes travelers too, strangers sharing space, breath, and blankets, because the cold doesn't care about personal boundaries. The nearest bathhouse might be a day's ride away, and water, clean water, is far too valuable to pour over skin except on rare occasions. Hygiene here is not a matter of comfort. It is a negotiation with survival. Your back aches from the uneven bed, if it can even be called that. A straw-stuffed mattress that pricks through its coarse, ticking cloth. Each husk, a little reminder that softness is for another century. Beneath you, the wood floor is cool and gritty. Someone has tracked mud in, and it never truly leaves. Dirt is a permanent resident. Outside, faint sounds begin to stir. A restless horse shifting near the barn. A rooster clearing its throat for the day's first cry. The wind brushing against the chinking in the cabin walls. But none of that feels fresher. None of it promises escape from the air inside. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the others. Every movement feels weighted, not just by fatigue, but by the knowledge that even the simplest morning task, fetching water, lighting the fire, tending animals, emptying waste, is labor, necessary, unavoidable labor. Life here does not wait for comfort or mood or preference. It simply demands, and you answer, because the alternative is hunger, sickness, or the silent, indifferent prairie claiming you back. Your modern lungs crave clean air. Your skin misses warm running water. Your senses long for a hint of soap and sun-dried cloth. But those luxuries belong to another age. Here, survival smells like sweat and smoke, and no one questions it. And in this dim cabin, surrounded by breath and earth and life pressed tightly together, you understand. Your modern body would not last a day here. Not because of danger or violence, but because life itself was heavier then, denser, close enough to touch and inhale. And Chapter 2, The Perils of Farming with a Side of Misery. Let's dust off our boots and take a stroll through the sun-soaked fields of the 1870s American frontier, where farming isn't just a job, it's a full-body workout combined with a comedy show. starring you as the overworked, underpaid protagonist. Imagine your local gym, but instead of fancy treadmills and air conditioning, you've got sunburns, thistles, and several imaginative ways to realize eating dirt is not a food group. Picture yourself as a deeply weathered farmer, aged somewhere between 40 and 100, thanks to the relentless grip of hard labor and a charming lack of sunscreen. You're bent double over a field so dry it could double as the Sahara's cousin, perpetually complaining about the weather, but never actually managing to do anything about it. They say farming builds character, but with hands gnarled like tree roots and a back that's permanently hunched into a question mark, you might be questioning your life choices by noon. You rise with the sun, which is less of an inspirational scene and more of a slow torture session. Before you can even negotiate a peace treaty with yesterday's squashed breakfast, that poorly cooked slab of bread, you're out in the fields, nearly eye level with the dirt, and pondering if this is really what adulthood looked like. The sun beats down mercilessly, and every squinting glance at the horizon looks like a mirage of a cold drink and a nap on a sandy beach. Spoiler alert, that's definitely not in your future. Now, while farming might seem straightforward, a plow in one hand and a dream of crops in the other, your reality is a bit more slapstick. Ever try to wrestle a stubborn mule named Ethel? Spoiler alert, she doesn't take kindly to new tricks or the idea that she should actually move. Picture yourself trying to lure her with a carrot while simultaneously holding onto a pitchfork and wondering if you've got time to question your life choices before breakfast. Worst case, Ethel wins, and you suddenly have a whole new career path in animal psychology to ponder. But let's pause here. We need to talk about irrigation. Ah yes, the noble art of watering crops. While modern inventions might involve clever hoses, complex systems, or maybe even a helpful kid with a squirt gun, you, brave frontier farmer, have only one tool at your disposal: a bucket. A bucket that has seen better days, possibly during the Watergate scandal, but hey, it holds water, at least for a while. As you lug that bucket back and forth, trying to convince your crops they might thrive with a splash or two, you can't help but think you're hauling water uphill both ways in the blazing sun, with an imaginary herd of enablers cheering you on. And let's talk dinner, because after a hearty day of battling dry soil and defiant hoofed creatures, you're going to need to eat. Imagine a meal consisting mostly of bread that's been prepared so many times it probably has its own fan club. You could almost hear it wondering if you'd be throwing it a retirement party for all the suffering it's endured. Let's see. For dinner, we have overcooked potatoes that feel like rocks, and a vegetable stew featuring whatever creepy little things manage to grow in the backyard. Fresh, locally sourced. Ah yes, going straight to the heart and tooth of farm fresh goodness. If you think your back hurts after a 5-hour Zoom call, just wait until you have to bend down and scrub dirty plates. Water? Now that's a luxury. But a majestic dip in a tank to wash up might as well be an Olympic event. Complicated choreography involving splashing, cramps, and a hefty dose of humility. Because nothing says, "I've worked hard today," like trying to scrub your hands clean in a rusted tub while you question why you ever thought the Wild West sounded like a good idea. And just when you think it can't get any more absurd, evening rolls around like a heavy fog. You plop down on what you could only describe as the bed of suffering. Of course, it's just a straw mattress. Sweet dreams, right? As you curl up like a pretzel, you can't shake the idea that you'd trade your last tooth for a decent pillow. But alas, you've got a whole universe of hay and the scent of spilled dreams instead. The day's struggles are definitely not over. As soon as your head hits the cushion, a splattered pile of driftwood and hope, the chickens outside decide it's the perfect time for a raucous debate over who gets the prime roosting space. Still, you can't help but chuckle at the thought that every bizarre episode of farm life is just another feather in your cap. Or maybe it was a straw in your bed. Either way, it's all part of the grand experience known as life on the frontier. In the 1800s, you didn't just survive the day. You made every heart-wrenching moment worth your while slipping into the comforting embrace of, well, at least this can only get better. Right, better. Chapter 3. Frosty Dilemmas in a Not-So-Super Cabin. Hey guys, grab your warmest woolen socks, dim those lights, and settle into something cozy. Because tonight we're diving into something colder than your ex's heart. Winter on the 1870s American frontier. Picture yourself in a log cabin that could barely qualify as a house. A place where the insulation is so bad, even the wind has a better chance of keeping warm than you do. Now, if you've ever felt your toes go numb while waiting for an Uber that's late for the 6th time, just wait until you experience the sheer joy of waking up in a cabin with frost crystals decorating your straw-filled mattress like it's some sort of icy art installation. I mean, who doesn't want to wake up to an alarm clock that sounds suspiciously like your own teeth chattering? But first, let's skip down the rabbit hole of absurd questions. Have you ever pondered how much effort it takes to stay warm with absolutely no central heating? Or have you ever tried to shovel snow with a wooden spoon? Because that's honestly all you could find. What about your comfort food cravings? Ever tried roasting a potato by holding it over a dying fireplace? It's not exactly the same as ordering takeout, is it? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870s. And not just anywhere. No. You've landed in a log cabin with enough drafts to qualify as a wind tunnel. The only thing providing you warmth is an unpredictable fire that you can only hope will remember to actually stay lit long enough for breakfast. You open your eyes, blinking against the morning light that filters through gaps in the logs. Like a perfect slice of Swiss cheese. Only this cheese is howling cold. You sit up, feeling the chill of frost biting at your face as if it had a personal vendetta against you. Your mattress isn't just any old mattress. It's a delightful ensemble of straw and good intentions. It might as well be a medieval torture device, with the frost crystals acting as the cherry on top. Fun, right? Now, let's take a moment to chat about your morning routine. Let's be honest. You've seen your cozy bathroom and warm shower with envy. Out here, your refreshing wake-up splash involves a bucket of water that might just be as icy as that last blind date you had. It's one of those moments where you think, is this really necessary? Am I trying to survive or lose my will to live? Dragging yourself out of that unyielding straw bed, you stick your foot out to test the temperature of the floor. Surprise! It feels like you're stepping onto a frigid glacier. You have to wonder if you, in some twisted plot twist, accidentally joined an Arctic expedition. Alas, no. Just your everyday life on the frontier. Your breath puffs into the air in clouds, resembling the battleground of an angry dragon, as you slowly shuffle towards the kitchen. Hooray! You've reached the stove, a relic of a time before indoor plumbing was a thing. It looks more like it could have starred in a horror movie than prepared breakfast. But hey, it's functional, mostly. As you rummage around, trying to find something to eat, anything at all, really, that doesn't show signs of having previously walked, crawled, or burrowed, you suddenly grasp what's going to be your breakfast. Half a potato. Perfect. Welcome to the culinary delights of frontier life, where your main options are slightly expired or revoltingly starchy. If you ever thought waiting for a microwave felt like torture, let me introduce you to the fine art of cooking over an open flame. It's a constant test of patience, a battle where the real winner is smoke inhalation. So you set that half potato on a frying pan that could easily double as a weapon, ready to face the flames with the enthusiasm levels of a caffeinated squirrel. Once breakfast is ready, which, spoiler alert, might mean a charred half of what was once a potato, it's time to face another harsh reality: heating your cabin. Don't get too cozy around the fire. It's more unpredictable than your favorite drama series cliffhanger. One moment it's warming up your frozen feet, and the next it decides to throw sparks at you like an amateur magician with a flair for the dramatic. You hug yourself, grasping at any semblance of warmth, while plotting your escape back to the modern world, where heating and food delivery apps actually exist. Ah, but the romantic notion of being a rugged frontier dweller says to muster your strength. Meanwhile, you can practically hear your modern counterparts chuckling over their central heating, with hot cocoa in hand, blissfully unaware that they're 5 taps away from calling an Uber to a cozy cafe with free Wi-Fi. At last, the day has finally started. And while your face inches closer to the fire, you can't help but think that every bit of this frost-bitten struggle isn't just cold. It's basically one long episode of a survival reality show, but without the glamorous production crew to document your misadventures. So as you take another crack at life in your delightful log cabin, remember, it's 1 part adventure, 2 parts slapstick, and a full serving of frostbite. And who knows, tomorrow you might wake up proud to discover you've survived not just another night in a cabin, but a whole week of chasing ice and dreaming of a warm bed. But for now, let that clever cabin humor keep your spirits warm. And just try not to get swept away in a frost-covered daydream. How's that for a not-so-happy little frontier tale? Chapter 4. Sweat, Scratchiness, and the Quest for Dinner. Hey guys, grab your softest blanket and prepare for a wild ride through one of the most amusingly uncomfortable experiences imaginable. Cooking in the 1870s on the American frontier. Tonight, we plunge into the world of summer heat, where you're a woman bravely donning multiple layers of itchy fabric while battling a wood-burning stove like it's a dragon guarding your dinner. Seriously, who needs a heroic quest when you can just try to make biscuits without losing your sanity? Or your eyebrows. So, let's talk about what it means to endure the sweltering sun while swathed in corsets, petticoats, and dresses long enough to practically sweep the floor. Have you ever felt like a human burrito trapped in a sweat lodge, only to be reminded that the only thing worse might be a day at your last family reunion? Speaking of reunions, remember those painful social events where Aunt Gertrude insists you wear your Sunday best, which just so happens to be made of heavy tweed and about as breathable as a plastic bag? Congratulations! You're living that nightmare on a daily basis out here on the frontier. Picture this. You wake up to the gentle, read obnoxiously loud, cacophony of chickens outside your window, ready to inspect what poor soul has stumbled into their realm today. Rubbing the sleep from your eyes, you realize that layering on dresses, which might as well be suits of armor, is all part of your delightful morning routine. Open your closet, and you'll find a fashion show that could only be described as what not to wear when it's hotter than a fried green tomato on a sunny day. But instead of high heels and designer labels, you're donning the finest selection of scratchy fabrics that could pass as a modern art interpretation of a cactus. And of course, corsets. Oh, those delightful contraptions that promise to give you that extra encouragement to stand upright. What if you were subject to their tyranny during the summer? It's like being hugged by a boa constrictor while simultaneously trying to do the cha-cha. Now that you're dressed like a hot pocket about to be put in a microwave, let's venture into the heart of your home, the kitchen. The sun bears down with a vengeance, and already that delightful dress fabric feels like a million tiny ants conducting a percussion concert on the back of your neck, all for the glory of preparing dinner, which would surely be easier if the stove didn't resemble a relic of a battle long forgotten. You approach the wood-burning stove, which seems to have a mind of its own. It creaks and wheezes like your great-uncle Bob after a long day of lawn maintenance. But instead of cooling down with iced tea, it's turning the already stuffy air into a sauna fit for a modern-day waterboarding technique. Your hair begins to sweat violently, a testament to gravity saying, no thank you, to whatever hair gel you dared to use. So, picture this. You're juggling a handful of dirt-stained ingredients, which in your world might as well be listed on a greatest hits album called Things That Should Not Be Cooked. You reach for a potato, but wait. What potato? Is it the one that managed to survive your questionable storage skills? Or the one that looks like it's been defying the laws of nature since the last frontier barbecue? Why does everything in your kitchen look like it could apply for a role in a horror movie? Attack of the overripe tomatoes. As you toss ingredients into the stove, you can't help but wonder if modern chefs would survive a single day here. Can you imagine Gordon Ramsay trying to whip up a mouth-watering meal in front of one of these smoky monsters? Where's your grease-proof paper? Where are your ingredients? We have an angry potato situation here. One glance at your turf could make him break out into hives, hands flailing in despair. And here's the kicker. Every time that wood-burning monster roars back to life, you scream like a startled cat. Sparks fly menacingly, just as bright as your dreams of escaping to a boutique yoga studio for a relaxing retreat far away from it all. Let's face it, cooking in the frontier is less about culinary artistry and more about just surviving until dinner. Spoiler alert. Dinner might be a charred mess that could qualify as art due to its disturbing resemblance to a modern abstract piece. Eventually, after what feels like an eternity in a sweat lodge of your own making, you prepare to serve whatever culinary crime you've conjured up. Your family gathers, pretending not to notice the burnt edges and suspiciously chewy texture of tonight's main course. You sit down at your feast, and with every bite, an untold saga of culinary misfortune unfolds. And this, you say casually while hiding the ashes of the dinner you're about to consume, is frontier cuisine at its finest. The truth is, you could star in your own 1870s cooking show called Kitchen Catastrophes, where every episode ends with your family laughing, as if you threw in a guest appearance by a confused raccoon. So here you are, sweating it out in the realm of the 1870s, where every layer of clothing is your enemy, and cooking is less about creating joy and more about sheer survival. As you ponder what we might call delicacies today, you decide that amidst the ill-fitting corsets and brownish soup, you've crafted memories, albeit sticky, itchy, and occasionally burnt into a state of culinary disaster. Indeed, that's one way to make a deliciously absurd slice of history. Chapter 5. Breakfast of Champions. Or maybe not. Hey guys, welcome to the breakfast table of the 1870s frontier, where the menu is as exciting as watching paint dry, and the flavors are brought to you by the universe's least charismatic actors. Hard biscuits, salt pork, and the kind of coffee that would make a grown man weep. Yes, you heard that right. It's the morning of your new life on the frontier, and you're probably considering sending an SOS to your local diner. Let's set the scene, shall we? Imagine waking up to the distant sound of a rooster crowing louder than the gossip at a church potluck, as if it has something important to say, like, "What are you doing with your life?" As you roll out of your straw-stuffed mattress, which closely resembles a wrestling ring for rats and dust bunnies, you realize that the smell of fresh coffee is doing its best just to distract you from the reality of your meager breakfast options. Your stomach growls audibly, but you know deep down that the only thing on your plate is a hard biscuit that could double as a doorstop. Now, let's talk about the biscuits. These beauties aren't the fluffy, buttery wonders you get at your local brunch spot. No. These biscuits are hard enough to survive a minor earthquake. It's like someone threw flour, a hint of water, and a prayer into a pot and dared the universe to cook them. You could almost use them as building materials for a frontier home. Need to fix a leaky roof? Boom, biscuit. Porch sagging? A couple of biscuits under the posts, and you're basically a carpenter. Meanwhile, here's the pièce de résistance: salt pork. This isn't the charming, sugary bacon you savor with your pancakes. Oh no. This is a chunk of pork that has been preserved in enough salt to make you wonder if it ever had any aspirations beyond being breakfast. Each bite is a reminder that if your taste buds are in for a roller coaster ride, they're seated in the smallest wooden cart, teetering perilously over a pit of despair. Just imagine this briny delight, a perfect marriage of flavor and texture that resembles old shoe leather. What a delightful culinary adventure. Speaking of adventures, how about that morning coffee? Ah yes, the nectar of the gods, brewed lovingly in an iron pot over the fire. Just one sip of this bitter elixir is like being slapped awake with a cold sock. It's the kind of coffee that screams at you, "Hey, remember that time you slept through your alarm? Well, this is the part where I revel in your suffering." As the steam wisps around like a sarcastic ghost, you wonder if the beans had been in a wrestling match with the ground before making their way into your pot. But what's that old saying? It's not about what you drink, it's about how much you grimace while drinking it. Now that you've had your breakfast, if you can even call it that, it's time to ponder life itself. Just what were you thinking deciding to jump into the life of a frontier farmer? It's like choosing to run a marathon while wearing clown shoes. Sure, it's adventurous, but you might end up with two left feet, circling back to a family reunion you desperately wanted to avoid. As you scrape your plate clean, because believe it or not, you refuse to let a good biscuit go to waste, you glance around the room. Your fellow settlers, equipped with sleep-deprived expressions and similarly underwhelming breakfasts, are gathering like reluctant zombies drawn to a buffet of misery. There's no need for small talk here. Everyone understands. A single, knowing nod goes around the table as you all silently agree. Well, at least we're all in this together, right? And then a thought strikes you. What if this culinary catastrophe was actually a social experiment? The vital question we all should be asking: could you invite the entire neighborhood over for a delightful breakfast while serving them the same hard biscuits and salt pork? The moment their faces sink into expressions of confused despair could double as a comedy show. It's like a kernel of happiness wrapped up in a breakfast burrito of uncertainty. But alas, perhaps that's a recipe to save for another day, one where you're not wielding the kitchen utensils like they're foreign objects in a sci-fi movie. Instead, you're stuck in this reality, where every meal feels like a cross between a survival challenge and a culinary horror show. Maybe the highlight of your meals will be when you finally find out how many hard biscuits it takes to get through a single day. It's like a game show nobody signed up for. As the morning fog lifts and the sun starts its ascent, you can now appreciate that breakfast wasn't just a meal. It was a rite of passage, a peculiar initiation into the whimsical chaos of frontier life, which will prepare you for the day's upcoming challenges. Who knows what is waiting around the corner? As you muster the strength to face whatever the 1870s holds in store, would it be a stampede of wild prairie chickens, or maybe an unexpected visit from an ornery neighbor? You can comfort yourself with the knowledge that you survived breakfast. That counts for something, doesn't it? So, as you prepare to jump into your next melodrama of frontier living, remember, tomorrow, breakfast might just be that hard biscuit you saved from today. And dang it, that's a victory unto itself. Chapter 6. Rise and shine. Or not. Hey guys, welcome back to the sunlit mystery that is the 1870s frontier. Tonight we delve into a world where waking up isn't just a struggle. It's a melange of suspense, danger, and questionable fashion choices. That's right. You may consider your morning struggle to get out of bed while avoiding dog hair an extreme sport. But those frontier folks, they're wrestling with sequels to the horror movie The Night Before. Before we get rolling into today's tale, because let's be honest, today's tale will include a delightful mix of peril and hilarity. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment if your spirit feels compelled. But only if you're into that kind of thing. Now, dim the lights, crank up that fan to keep the hot air at bay, and settle in. Let your imagination wander into the world of hard, dusty beds and suspiciously animated livestock. Have you ever wondered how a frontier settler managed to put on boots without first conducting a thorough inspection for local wildlife? Or why every frontier morning seemed to come with a side of anxiety and the creeping dread of a rattlesnake in your footwear? Are you prepared to be both entertained and mildly horrified? Well then, brace yourself. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870s America, a time when the phrase, "wake up and smell the coffee," was more about survival than sheer delight. You stretch out your limbs, adorned in a threadbare shirt and trousers that have seen better days. A lot better. As your toes touch the rough wooden floor, you notice something that sends your morning spiraling into a delightful panic. You reach down to slip on your beloved pair of dusty, worn leather boots, a fine specimen of frontier fashion, complete with the kind of scuff marks that tell tales of many a hard day's labor. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself. But there's a twist in today's narrative, folks. Just as you shake your boots to clear out any lurking debris, a task you approach with the kind of zest usually reserved for fighting off beehives, something slips out and lands with a crunch on the floor. You freeze. What could it be? A crumpled-up receipt from a past misadventure. Perhaps last week's leftover biscuit. Oh, no. It's something far more treacherous. A small, venomous snake, or worse yet, a scorpion. Yes, you heard that right. Frontier life is nothing if not a thrilling mix of survival skills and questionable fashion choices that may or may not include embracing an unintentional boot slipper of doom. The snake glares at you, as if challenging your very existence in its home of choice. You thought you could just waltz in here, it seems to hiss. Meanwhile, your imagination spirals. What if snakes had dreams, and yours had dreamt of being your boot's new stylish accessory? You can almost hear the breakfast conversation at the local diner. Oh, did you hear Frank had a real beauty of a rattler curled up in his left boot? Looks like snake charmers could take a few pointers from him. Meanwhile, you stand there, caught in a theatrics-worthy moment, wondering if perhaps this isn't a clear sign that you should reconsider your commitment to frontier life. But let's face it, the frontier is not known for its gentle nudges or helpful suggestions. Next, you find yourself lost in thought about the sheer absurdity of this whole existence. It's like an elaborate prank meant for whoever dared venture beyond the comforts of civilized life. Hey, buddy, did you sign up for a life full of washing hard biscuits and planning your escape from creatures you might accidentally eat? Surprise! Now let's revisit the ceramic history of your leather boots. Remember when you were told they'd protect you, keep you safe from thorns, snakes, and other charmers of the earth? Turns out, they only greet the day with a thang. You can't help but think that in modern life you might have to contend with less existentially terrifying foes,
like grocery store checkout lines. But here, on the frontier, it's all about eyeing your boots with the same attention you'd use when scanning the horizon for incoming herds of buffalo. The moment passes. You wrap your head around this new reality. You're still alive, after all. But if your boots decide to host local wildlife every morning, this frontier life has suddenly become a comical survival test. A game show where you compete against yourself. The stakes being how many snakes you can dodge before needing a new pair of boots. As you compose yourself and reconsider the meaning of rise and shine, the dust settles, and you remind yourself that the world is still spinning, or sliding. You're still a part of this wild, sometimes hair-raising adventure. After all, if nothing else, having a snake as a morning surprise qualifies as something to write home about, right? And with that, you brace yourself for the realities of the 1870s frontier, resolved to take on whatever the day has in store, hoping that the next evening does not include a scorpion trying to become your boot's new best friend. After all, they say laughter is the best medicine, especially when your daily footwear includes free wildlife attractions.
Chapter 7. A storm is brewing, and it's not just the coffee. Welcome back, dear adventurer, to the vast, unforgiving landscapes of the 1870s frontier, where every gust of wind feels like nature's way of judging your life choices. Picture this. A lone figure stands, dwarfed by the immense prairie, hands resting uncertainly on a worn leather belt, face turned toward ominous clouds that roll in like they've got a personal grudge against your existence. It's as if the weather system has decided to put on a dramatic show for one, and, spoiler alert, you didn't pay for the upgrade to comfort class. As you survey the horizon, that "where the heck did that come from" anxiety bubbles up. The clouds look more like a gathering of disgruntled elders at a family reunion, ready to unleash a monsoon of scorn. You might even hear the distant rumble of thunder that sounds suspiciously like an irritable grizzly bear auditioning for a part in a horror film. Now, let's take a short detour to modern times, shall we? If you think weather can be dramatic these days, just wait until you experience the frontier's version of atmospheric mood swings. A mild drizzle in your urban dwelling might lead to the lost opportunity of brunching out. But here, a drizzle could transform into a deluge, dropping enough rain to turn your boots into mini flotation devices. If only you had packed your fashion-savvy life jacket and rubber ducky, eh? But let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Before we can even consider rallying the local wildlife for a rain date, you'll recall the stark reality of your morning decisions. Decisions like forgetting to fortify your cabin with actual walls instead of charming wishful thinking. Yes, the first step into frontier life wasn't just a walk in the park. It was like stepping onto a rickety seesaw at a three-ring circus, while the ringmaster is inviting disaster with a loudspeaker. You glance around nervously, instinctively squinting at the horizon. If you were to plot the course of your life on a timeline, it would probably feature a collection of poor decisions with colorful commentary. Would it be so much to ask for warning signs, or at least a local wildlife scout to nudge you toward better choices? Instead, all you've got is a coyote eyeing you up like you're an unopened can of beans, contemplating whether you're lucky enough to escape its gastronomic ambitions. As those clouds swirl ominously above you, You realize that being a frontier settler includes more than just stunning vistas filled with awkward tumbleweeds. It's a game of patience, endurance, and avoiding direct eye contact with storm clouds, reminding you that being weathered doesn't just apply to hands in this harsh land. Oh no, it's a full-body experience. Now, let's give some tender love and care to your trusty hat. Perhaps made of felt or treated fur, it's supposed to provide protection from both sun and torrential downpours. But as the first drop of rain splats against its surface, you can't help but think your hat is now taking a stand on both sides. 1 minute, it's a proud shelter. The next, it feels like it's pouring out classified information to the heavens. Suddenly, the wind picks up with the energy of a child on a sugar high. It yanks at your jacket, desperately trying to give you a fashionable 90s grunge look. Good luck. It's hard to strike a pose in the face of weather like this, while convinced you're trapped in an unfortunate episode of an early wildlife documentary. But hey, at least nature is telling you the truth. This place is severely testing the limits of your fashion choices, biomes, and overall sanity. What's that sound? Is it the rustling of bushes, or the universe cackling at your expense? A nearby tree sways, creaking ominously. And for a fleeting moment, you wonder whether nature might kick it into a spinning, unexpected life simulation. Should you huddle under the branches, or consider yourself part of an elaborate Native American tree-hugging experiment? Ah, but the show must go on. As the weather closes in, a thought strikes. You have only just forged an unbreakable bond with the location of your anxiety-stricken feet. You survived this morning's snake meme, and now, well, you're about to become part of the unfortunate folklore of the one who defied the clouds. It sounds better than the guy who just didn't make it to breakfast. And just like that, the clouds open up as you scout for cover, shouting, "Surprise!" in a way that leaves much to be desired in the realm of politeness. A torrential downpour showers down. And isn't that just the cherry on top of your already ramshackle Sunday called frontier living? It's like trying to hold a picnic in a monsoon, while your relatives argue over who stole the last biscuit. Yet, through the tumult, laughter breaks the tension. Because in this wild ride of a narrative that could only be written by the capricious finger of a weathered god, the essence of life remains. Take it as it comes. Embrace the chaos and remember, no matter how bad the weather gets, you could always be rooted in the laughter of friends, or the distant chortle of a passing coyote. You may not survive the day unscathed, but you can write about it later and complain to anyone who'll listen. You won't believe what storm tried to take my hat off, because, as they say, adversity makes for the best stories, and you are freshly brewed in the great American frontier. With that in mind, the stormy trials continue. You are not alone in your struggle. But you are in a narrative brimming with absurdity and laughter. The finest tools of survival. Each rain-soaked moment turns into a tale you'll recount. Each gust of wind shaping a horizon that might just hold another surprise. Because when it all settles down, only the bravest or the most absurdly lucky will pull through. Huddled under their weathered leather jacket, ready for whatever wild terrain lies ahead. Stay tuned, brave soul. The day is young, the sky may darken, and we've got a frontier to conquer. Chapter 8. The Wild West Whiff of Inconvenience. Hey guys, welcome back to our delightfully chaotic journey through history. A place where conveniences are so rare, they could be classified as endangered species. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into the fragrant world of the 1870s frontier. Imagine a time when the only thing more pungent than the neglected town street was the optimism of hopeful settlers who thought life on the prairie would be just like the brochures. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. At all. But before we start this adventure into the historical pitfalls of personal hygiene, or complete lack thereof, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and comment. But only if you really enjoy it. No pressure, just a gentle nudge from the universe, like a wayward tumbleweed brushing against your leg. Now, let's prepare to dim those lights, turn on a fan, and settle into your imaginary script about life in the Wild West, where cleanliness was as philosophical a concept as, why did I leave that cozy city life behind? Picture this. You're taking a leisurely stroll down the dusty street of a frontier town, right in the heart of the 1870s. Except, this isn't your standard promenade, dear friend. No. It's more like a hindrance course designed for a reality TV show, hosted by nature's most uninviting elements. The air feels heavy, saturated with a mixture of dried horse manure so pungent, even the flies seem to reconsider their life choices. Seriously, you can almost hear them buzzing with regret about their career paths. Just look around. That charming little hodgepodge of wooden buildings. They're as architecturally sound as a stack of flimsy pancakes. And what's beneath your feet? A delightful carpet of garbage. Who needs an aroma candle when you've got, let's say, vintage compost wafting through the air? It's like an olfactory slap in the face, reminding you that you are, in fact, alive. Ever wondered what a city dweller from today would think? Nothing like jumping into a puddle of stagnant water that doubles as a breeding ground for every disease you've never heard of. Oh, you want to live life on the edge? How about some dysentery with your morning coffee? How refreshing. Life back then wasn't just exhilarating. It was a veritable game of biological Russian roulette. But let's focus on what represented the height of cutting-edge sanitation in a 1870s frontier town. Those dandy wooden troughs. You know, the ones purposefully built to hold water. Or who knows what else. It's as if the invention of flushing toilets was still on the drawing board, right between fire and wheel. So there you are, thinking about the world's most creative ways to clean your underarms, while the locals feel proud if they manage to toss a few scraggly herbs into the water there, hoping for a miracle outcome. you might catch an old-timer proudly exclaiming, "This here's my bathwater from a week ago. The scent'll keep the varmints away." It's a tough life when the best you can come up with is personal smell as a deterrent. Look, if you think your office mates complain about your sock drawer emanating odors after a long week of sitting, brace yourself for the pioneering simultaneity of nature's worst odors compressed into one long, dusty street. Ever tried to endure a hot day with the added charm of that delightful bouquet of horse droppings? It's like stepping into a boiled cabbage soup without the soup. On a scale from 1 to "you're never getting those shoes clean again," this whole experience ranks a resounding 10. And speaking of uninvited guests, I do hope you're not too fond of flies. With the saturation of filth here, they seem to have formed their own little social circles, buzzing about with the confidence of a New York business mogul. Plus, let's not forget the kind folk who grumble about the good old days. Days where the most effort they expended was brewing their tea in the morning, then promptly forgetting it because the cattle were stampeding down the street. A new daily adventure we'd rather not sign up for. And then there's a fanciful little concept known as working conditions. Who needs pearly white teeth or polished shoes when you've got grit under your nails that tells a story? Spoiler alert. It's not always the good kind. It's like the neat freak in your life shook their head in disgust, while you revel in the adventurous, earthy tones of your reality. By now, you might be wondering how the locals manage to thrive despite all these delightful circumstances. Imagine stringing a "welcome" sign on the town's only squalor-strewn alley. Not the kind of warmth that invites people. It's the kind that repels dinner guests faster than a conversation about politics at Thanksgiving dinner. Ah, yes. Life in this frontier town is a humorous symphony of resilience and muddled misadventures, making you appreciate the simple joys of a hot shower, a location that doesn't resemble a garbage dump, and maybe, just maybe, a little less horse manure. Because remember, in a place where optimism has seen better days, even the flies have given up on dreams of grandeur, settling instead for a life of acrid whirring and questionable judgments. So, as you pull a jacket over your shoulders, prepare yourself for yet another raucous venture in this whirlwind of absurdity. Life keeps rolling on, much like those tumbleweeds eternally trying to escape the frankly dismal realities of a frontier town. Buckle up, my adventurous spirit, because you're diving back into the delightful chaos of the Wild West, Chapter 9, The Saloon of Misfortune. Now that your journey through the eccentricities of frontier life has come to an amusing juncture, let's dive into a softer yet equally dubious realm, where men bear the weight of their lawlessness with a cocktail that would make even the most ambitious bartender in a hipster bar shudder. Welcome to the saloon. Yes, the notorious heart of every Wild West town. A sacred space where men, and a few brave women, gathered to drown their sorrows in raw, toxic alcohol, capable of curdling milk from 50 paces. As you step through the creaky doors, assuming they still hang on their hinges, you're met with a fragrant fog that could only be described as eau de desperation. The air is thick, a pungent blend of sweat, unwashed bodies, and the remnants of last night's questionable dinner. Possibly mashed potatoes mixed with gunpowder. Who needs fancy cocktails when you can enjoy the delightful bouquet of the less traveled paths of culinary ambition? Picture yourself glancing around the dimly lit saloon. The wooden beams overhead sag, echoing the weight of bad decisions made by countless patrons. The walls, adorned with haphazardly hung wanted posters and half-torn portraits of long-lost loves or notorious outlaws, stand witness to tales more exaggerated than a child's bedtime story. That one fellow over there, was he really the quickest gun in the West, or just exceptionally lucky the last time he had a shootout with a rabid squirrel? Your eyes are drawn to the bar, crafted from rough-hewn planks that look like they barely survived a timber mill. Behind the bar, a shadowy figure is pouring a concoction that could only be described as the essence of regret. Think of something akin to a mixologist who's a bit too close to a chemistry lab. Raw alcohol swirled with what appears to be powdered gunpowder and a splash of turpentine. You can practically hear the drink whisper, "Drink me, if you dare," followed by a polite cough that's less about style and more about survival. Now, gentlemen, who's ready for a shot of El Diablo's delight? The bartender grins, winking merrily while simultaneously dodging a spat-out tooth from a nearby patron. His pitch seems to be working. A few brave souls nod their heads, as if they have any idea what they might be pouring down their throats. You can almost hear their internal monologues arguing, "It's probably just a mild poison. What's the worst that could happen? You live once." And yet, the saloon buzzes with laughter and bickering. Patrons clink their glasses, made from metal and less than reliable sources, while proclaiming life's grand aspirations over drinks that could put hair on your chest. Not that they'd want to, based on how little they all seem to bathe. You ever had a body odor so strong it can knock a coyote off its feet? One burly gentleman bellows, prompting laughter from his buddies, who are too busy stuffing their faces with stale bread to care about aromas, unless it's the scent of whatever's brewing and bubbling behind the bar. While you ponder this dubious establishment's sanitary practices, allow yourself to be drawn into a colorful family of characters. There's the elderly cowboy who tells tales of his glory days, when he practically single-handedly tamed a herd of wild horses that, let's be real, were likely just mildly irritable. You can see the glimmer of embellishment in his eyes as he talks about the strength of his lasso, which, if memory serves, he lost to a neighbor's cat during a rather dramatic poker night. Next to him sits a lady clad in layers of dusty skirts, and a pet parrot that squawks loudly in union with her slurred laughter. You can't quite make out her stories, but they seem equally muddled as the drams she's downed. She has a certain charisma about her, although whether or not she's ever ventured past the saloon door is up for debate. Her parrot, however, has mastered a repertoire of curse words that could rival the most seasoned sailor. As flirtations and brawls meld seamlessly in a cloud of bad breath and combustible spirits, you overhear discussions that would make absolutely no sense in your modern cozy living room. Did you hear that Jesse rode into town and challenged Paul to a hand of cards? One man announces in between swigs, triumphantly oblivious to the fact that a room full of inhabitants had already deemed Jesse a poor card shark. Last time, he ended up betting his boots, and trust me, they stink worse than last Sunday's stew. Yes, life at the Frontier Saloon wouldn't be complete without an impromptu dance-off where two cowboys, fueled by liquid courage, attempt to impress the crowd. One is trying to spin gracefully, while the other is channeling moves that resemble an octopus in distress. Each step is met with cheers and howls of laughter. Anytime an unfortunate soul trips on the floor, one can only presume that is simply more fodder for the evening's comedy. The floor is sticky with spilled drinks, the remnants of supper, and possibly some toppings best left unmentioned. As the saloon swells with warmth, camaraderie, and questionable decisions, you can't help but wonder, how in the world do these folks survive the day-to-day life of the 1870s, when one drink could send them over a cliff, both literally and figuratively? It's like a paradox of life choices, and you get to sit back and enjoy the show. A premium front row seat in the production called Your Past is an Absurd Comedy. So as the misadventures unfold around you, just remember this one joyous nugget of wisdom. No matter how rough the ride may seem in this rickety frontier life, you can always count on laughter, a saloon, and a questionable drink to make the world seem a shade brighter, if only for a moment. Life may be unpredictable, but at the very least it's remarkably entertaining. Unless you just inhaled too deeply of that saloon's air, in which case you might want to reconsider your life choices. Buckle up. You're in for the wildest ride yet. Chapter 10. A Saloon Full of Regrets. Let's talk about chaos. Not just your average run-of-the-mill chaos that you might find at a family reunion. No. We're diving headfirst into the kind of bedlam found within the walls of a Wild West saloon. It's a place where a sudden outburst of misguided bravado can transform a friendly drink into a full-blown frenzy quicker than you can say misplaced machismo. Picture it. Low-hanging lanterns casting flickering light on a gathering of rough-and-tumble cowpokes who stagger around like marionettes with cut strings. The air swirls with the dual scents of cheap whiskey and bruised egos, and the occasional thump of a fist against a table sets off a chain reaction that could rival your toddler's legendary meltdowns over snack time. Now, you're standing there, trying to blend in, but the "I've got nothing to prove" facade you were hoping for crumbles faster than a stale cracker at a 3-day-old saloon pie-eating contest. You might catch a glance at the bar, where a bartender with a mustache that could host an entire family of squirrels is pouring drinks faster than a modern barista on espresso. It's a potentially lethal concoction that makes you wonder if the recipes were scribbled in a frenzy by a mad scientist after an unfortunate encounter with a rabid raccoon. Then, boom! Out of nowhere, an argument erupts between two men about the merits of their horses, or perhaps their mothers. Who can really tell? One man, let's call him Buster, claims his mare is faster than a jackrabbit on roller skates, while the other, Slim, insists his horse could outrun a bullet. Did we mention that Slim has already had one too many servings of El Diablo's Delight? The odds are about as favorable as your options at a vegan barbecue. Suddenly, Buster shouts, "This ain't no place for talk. Prove it!" You glance around the saloon, half expecting a crowd to hush as if they were about to witness the Academy Awards. Spoiler alert, this isn't Hollywood, and that kind of chivalric performance is as likely as finding a triple chocolate cake in an 1870s dessert menu. The argument escalates faster than Buster's waistband after Thanksgiving dinner. One moment they're debating the top speed of overgrown mustard-infested mammals, and the next, Buster's hand hovers dangerously close to a six-shooter tucked into his belt. The silence is cracked by the sound of laughter, genuine, slight alarm laughter. "Better grab the popcorn," someone declares loudly, to which a chorus of half-hearted chuckles follows. But then it happens. A sudden shot rings out, the sound echoing like an overly enthusiastic firecracker, sending the barkeep ducking behind the counter faster than you can blink. The saloon erupts into a chaotic dance of overturned tables and startled patrons. One fellow tries to save his whiskey glass, but only manages to spill it all over his own lap. "Rude," he proclaims, staring at the sticky chaos. As fists fly and shouts collide in a cacophony of absurdity, the picturesque view of the Wild West becomes a scene straight from a slapstick comedy. You might witness a drunken cowboy spinning in circles, only to fall face first into a plate of yesterday's stew. A true gourmet catastrophe by any standard. Remember the lady with the dusty skirts and the talkative parrot? She's now hoisting a chair, swinging it like a sword in the midst of the chaos, as she yells about the etiquette of chair-based jousting. A very niche sport that probably deserves more respect than it actually receives. "Take that, you horse thief!" she hollers, illuminating her own lack of awareness. Fortunately, the parrot chimes in, squawking curses that would make a sailor blush, adding a theatrical flair to the absurdity. In the corner, a bewildered gambler who thought this was just a leisurely card game now sits with a poker face that speaks volumes of regret. "There's a reason I keep my money in my boot," he mutters beneath his breath, clutching his chips as if they are live ammunition on the battlefield of bad decisions. Meanwhile, Buster has managed to sustain a mild, yet somehow impressive hail of insults directed at Slim, who now spends most of his time dodging whiskey debris and wild swings from a table leg holding merry-go-round of madness. The good news? You're getting quite the education in frontier improvisation. As the dust settles, literally and metaphorically thanks to the less than pristine state of the saloon floor, you notice the air finally beginning to clear. Buster, now red-faced and attempting to reclaim his dignity, pulls his hat down low, while Slim nurses what could only be described as a bruised ego and one serious hangover waiting to happen. And in the end, as everyone gathers their senses and possibly a few stray teeth, you can't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Wild West life isn't just about gunfights and cattle rustling. It's also about navigating the complexities of human folly amid the chaos of tequila-fueled bravado. Perhaps next time they'll think twice before resorting to shooting practice over who has the best horse. Or at the very least, share their shots with the kindly bartender before things get out of hand once again. There it is. The remarkable realization that wherever you go, whether in a 21st century bar or a 1870s saloon, the most dangerous cocktail always comes with a generous side of ego, absurdity, and the lingering aroma of regret. And that, my friends, is something to sleep on with a smile. Chapter 11. The Unusual Art of Frontier Justice. Let's set the scene, shall we? Picture a sun-drenched afternoon in the 1870s Wild West, where the air is thick with the scent of gunpowder, dust, and a sprinkle of awful life choices. You're standing under a tree, one of those gnarled old things that look like it got into a fight with a tornado and lost spectacularly. And there's a grim setup, a hastily constructed gallows, because apparently shoddy carpentry was the go-to solution for all disputes back then. Now you might be wondering, why, oh why, was this the method of choice for solving problems among frontier folk? Did they have no access to Yelp reviews for conflict resolution? Let's see. 1 star. The last fella here got his neck stretched like a shoelace. Absolutely no stars for service. Gathered around this particular patch of bad decisions are a handful of locals. Half are dressed like they just escaped from a cattle drive, and the other half look like they're checking their watch and debating whether they'd rather be at a saloon only to lose a poker game. Because let's face it, frontier justice wasn't exactly the highlight of Saturday night. As you watch, you can't help but hear the raucous banter around you, a collection of men asserting their flimsy ideas of honor, like a bunch of kids boasting about who can hold their breath the longest. One dude, let's call him Rough Eddie, pushes his wide-brimmed hat back and proclaims, "I say we hang him high, like my hat on a good day." To which another guy responds, "And what if the wind picks up, Eddie? We don't need a neck swinging in the breeze like a weather vane." It's like a scene out of a terrible sitcom, only this is real life, and instead of laughing, it feels like you might want to hand someone a Netflix subscription to distract them from their poor life choices. But of course, this is the Wild West, where a whisper of wrongdoing could earn you a one-way ticket to Necktieville before you can even order a sarsaparilla. Let's just say the local sheriff is somewhere between busy and entirely uninterested, probably trying to remember where he left his last bottle of whiskey, or pondering the depths of reality while staring blankly at the myriad of ways he could also be an unhappy farmer instead. Now here's a nugget worth pondering. What were these frontier folks craving? Justice served hot and steamy in one sweltering, dusty afternoon? Or did they just fancy themselves as avengers on the mean streets of the prairie? You can imagine their motives lined up like a row of misfit toys. A concoction of boredom, testosterone, and the growing realization that perhaps their understanding of moral authority had seen better days. Much like their boots, which are perpetually caked in mud and misadventures. If nothing else, this gathering serves as a bizarre social event. Think of it as the early American equivalent of a barbecue, without the ribs. Everyone's here, standing around, awkwardly gripping their rifles, while the central figure, let's call him Downtrodden Dave, is standing at the gallows, looking less like a criminal and more like a disheveled scarecrow waiting for a good wind to come along and help him out. "Hey, Dave, how do you feel about this delightful little arrangement?" someone shouts. The kind of guy who treats despair like an art form. "I'd say you've got a solid shot at being the trendsetter for neck injury fashion. What's your strategy today? Fleece or sass?" And with each poorly aimed quip, you can almost feel the collective eye roll echo across the prairie. But let's not be hasty. These were rugged times, where the lack of a quick trial system led to spontaneous decisions worse than a flat tire in a thunderstorm. The truth is, if you found yourself on the wrong side of judgment, spinning yarns about your character wouldn't exactly save you. The townsfolk needed some entertainment and questionable life choices. And here was downtrodden Dave turning into the life of the party. Figuratively speaking, of course. His days of questionable decisions amounted to one long, continuous scroll of bad Yelp reviews. Meanwhile, another bystander suddenly chimes in, holding up a potted plant with all the sincerity of a third grader presenting at career day. "Wouldn't it be easier to just send him to therapy?" he suggests. And perhaps he was on to something. After all, nothing says frontier justice like a therapeutic circle where everyone gets to share their feelings. How about we gather round with our horses and just talk this out, folks? But that's the thing about frontier justice. It's less about actual justice, and more about who can play the most dramatic role in the unrelenting theater of human stupidity. You can hear them chortle and howl, each as ridiculous as the last, until finally a decision is made. The judge of the day, a grizzled old man who could easily pass for a grouchy godfather, raises his hand and announces, "After careful consideration, we'll make it quick and less than informative." And just like that, life resumes in the Wild West, with the sun dipping low over the horizon, leaving behind an awkward silence almost comfortable in its absurdity. The makeshift gallows now vacant, a reminder of a day gone awry, and somewhere, deep within the tiny pocket of your consciousness, you realize just how fleeting and ridiculous this life truly is. Isn't it funny? You come to the Wild West expecting legendary fast draws and tales of heroic cowboys, and instead you witness a circus of sorts, an all-you-can-eat buffet of misunderstanding serving a generous helping of ill-conceived justice. And with that thought bubbling to the surface of your mind, you can't help but chuckle at the wild world that somehow thinks hanging a guy is a valid solution. It's a reminder that, even long ago, finest moments often come wrapped in a big old bow of absurdity. Chapter 12. Whiskey, Wounds, and Way Too Much Courage. Ah, the good old days of frontier medicine, or as I like to call it, survival of the least qualified. Let's set the scene. You find yourself in a rustic doctor's office. If by office you mean a barn-like structure smelling of hay and questionable decisions. The floors are covered in sawdust, which, believe it or not, is there for a purpose. No, it's not an avant-garde art installation. It's to mop up whatever bodily fluids the good doctor failed to contain during his previous successful surgeries. Talk about an ambience that truly screams, "Stay away." You glance around and notice the surgical tools laid out on a table, and I assure you, they are as welcoming as a moose at a tea party. crude, unsterilized, and looking like they were cobbled together during a particularly intense drunken Monopoly game. You could swear they were leftovers from a medieval torture chamber that was itself repurposed as a Yelp establishment, 1 star due to lack of hygienic considerations. Welcome to Wild West Urgent Care, where your worst fears come to get misplaced in our toolbox, announces the doctor, a mustachioed fellow who's sporting a grin that embodies a mix of confidence and sheer recklessness. He gestures to a nearby patient, let's call him Wounded Walter, who is perched awkwardly on an unsturdy stool that squeaks like a guilty church mouse. Now, if you think a glass of whiskey solves all your problems, then welcome to the 1870s. Wounded Walter doesn't have the privilege of anesthetics or modern pain relief. No, today he's being prepped for a surgery that sounds incredibly painless, if you disregard the fact that your insides might soon resemble a chaotic game of Twister. We're going to fix that leg, but first, a shot of whiskey, the doctor says, like he's offering up a delightful cocktail recipe instead of the first step towards potential disaster. Forget about the pain management we've all come to expect. It's more like a twisted version of Dare to be Brave, only with a side of horror. You wonder if he'd rather have that whiskey straight in the glass or in a syringe, and you can just hear Wounded Walter's internal monologue. Oh boy, a good old frontier fixer-upper. Nothing like a little alcohol to wash away my concerns and, potentially, my leg. Cheers. You can feel the room's energy shift as he downs the whiskey in one go, possibly hoping to awaken some hidden courage buried deep within. As the doctor preps his tools, no hand sanitizer in sight, Wounded Walter appears to be envisioning his escape plan while groaning. It's a common practice in frontier medicine. Escape while you can, especially when the doctor starts sharpening something that resembles a garden spade. The doctor chuckles at Walter's wide-eyed horror. It's less a method of healing and more a game of how much can we mess with this fellow before he passes out. What comes next cannot possibly be described as elegant or even humane. With a gentle shove, the doc motions for help from a few burly onlookers. "Hold him steady," he yells, like he's about to launch an amateur rodeo. You feel your heart race on Walter's behalf as he contemplates the massive mistake he made by coming here. It's not just a leg they're trying to save. It's his dignity. And we all know how that often gets trampled on in these wild setbacks of frontier life. "Bring me, that rusty thing," the doctor exclaims, waving his hand dismissively at the tools. You watch as one of the burly onlookers grabs hold of the closest item resembling a wand of despair. A flat-bladed tool that looks more suitable for jamming open a bottle of pickles from a 6-month expedition. Who needs medical instruments when bottle openers have become the new standard, right? Now, Walter, you just hold on tight to, well, whatever. With a questionable amount of confidence, the doctor plunges into his task, and Wounded Walter utters a pained composition that would make a choir of hyenas sound soothing. It's a symphony of part agony, part surprise, and an effervescent dash of delusion. "Just think of the wild adventures ahead, my friend," he shouts. The results may vary on that front. In that moment, you can't help but imagine what modern life would be like if we replicated this level of medical care. Picture it. You walk into a clinic today and are greeted with fluorescent lights, sterile smells, and a nurse yelling, "Please have a seat while we divvy out shots of whiskey and questionable surgical wisdom." The sheer absurdity of the situation would have Jed Clampett rolling in his grave from laughter. Remember, the whiskey helps with the pain, but it doesn't replace the leg we're about to remove. The doc hollers with a gleam in his eye. Meanwhile, outside, the frontier continues in blissful ignorance, with people riding off into sunsets and explaining away their leg injuries as if they were mere sprains from dodgeball. But worry not, dear listener. Wounded Walter manages to survive the operation, likely due to sheer stubbornness, enhanced minimally by that glass of whiskey. It turns out, if you survived the 1870s frontier surgeries, you were probably made of tougher stuff than iron. A little whiskey, a few questionable tools, and a disheveled doctor could transform you into a local folk hero. Just another ordinary day in the life of the frontier, where pain and laughter waltz hand in hand, and self-preservation is often left out in the barn with the rest of the wild and mysterious creatures. And so, you come to appreciate the originality of your daily ailments today. If you're dealing with any inconvenience, just imagine it paired with a side of frontier treatment. Here's hoping your next treatment includes fluffy pillows and modern medicine. Chapter 13. A Feast of Foulness. The Culinary Capers of the 1870s Frontier. Welcome to dinner time in the 1870s, where culinary delights might also include a side of mild dysentery, and anyone who didn't know better might think home-cooked meal was a euphemism for burnt and possibly mildly toxic. Gather around, folks. You're about to witness a meal that is less a taste of home and more my life choices are questionable. Picture this. A family is huddled around a rickety wooden table, the kind that creaks ominously, like it's about to give way under the weight of not just the food, but the collective fears of food poisoning simmering underneath. The air is thick with a profound sense of anticipation. Their dinner? Freshly salvaged from the depths of an antiquated root cellar, where meat has been preserved with the enthusiasm of a toddler with finger paints. Plenty of salt and smoke, but not necessarily in the right proportions. The protagonist of our meal is a slab of meat that looks like it time-traveled straight from a freaky preservation experiment gone awry. Think of it as if a steak went to a rock concert in the swamp. Delicious, right? The color can only be described as mysterious gray. The texture, roughly akin to a leather boot that got caught in a rainstorm. And the smell? Well, let's just say it's giving off an aroma with all the inviting warmth of a summer dumpster in July. Ah yes, salt, the unsung hero of all frontier dishes. Today's entree is generously seasoned with enough salt to make it taste like an ocean trapped in a meat locker. Have you ever tried to choke down a mouthful of pure salt? It's like kissing the ocean after a particularly enthusiasm-filled seawater slurp. The family members at the table eye the meat skeptically, and you can practically hear their collective thoughts. Is this a meal or a test of our vaccination status? Will I be taking a trip to the outhouse shortly after this? Just then, you hear a sneeze, the delicate kind, reserved for someone who certainly has a few close friends in the dysentery department. Honey, could you pass the not horrifying vegetables? I think the radishes might still be moving, the mother says, eyes darting toward the corner, where she could have sworn she saw a twitch from last week's leftovers. And while we're at it, why does everything on this table lose a round in the presentation department? You know that overly enthusiastic dad who tries to carve the turkey into what he calls art? Well, this family dinner seems to be channeling that spirit, except they're using a piece of gear that looks more suited for breaking rocks than serving food. No one can say we aren't adventurous, the father quips, a bold smile plastered on his face as he admires the meat. Today, we could either dine on a slab of mystery or enjoy a never-ending game of guess that ingredient. Ever tried to carve meat with a knife that's just a touch less sharp than your neighbor's complaints about your kids? It's a culinary experience akin to performing a DIY surgery with nothing but a paperclip and your best friend's handwriting guidance. The meat is tougher than a long-winded story from Uncle Fred about his last fishing trip. With every aggressive pull of the knife, the dinner seems to resist, with all the spirit of a rebellious toddler refusing to leave the playground. At this point, the family has got to quietly wonder, are we eating, or are we just engaging in very spirited wrestling with our own hunger? When one finally dares to take a bite, you can see the mental gymnastics unfold. First comes the wide-eyed glance of cautious bravery, followed by chewing that resembles a cow contemplating life choices whilst chewing on its cud. Texture. Think chewing rubber bands coated in sorrow. Flavor? An odd mix of, I hope this isn't a bad idea, and remind me to never eat salt again. The pressure is on for the youngest child, who gives an adorably dramatic gasp as they attempt to choke down a slice of what can only be described as an adventure you didn't sign up for. I dare say, Betty, the father grins, undeterred. If nothing else, this should make for a fine tale when we recount the many flavors of frontier life. The meat has a unique aroma, and with that the entire family bursts into laughter, a hearty and infectious sound that dances around the cabin like a gathering dust mote. In this remote slice of the West, the ability to laugh off a rancid meal defines survival. As you drift off into sound sleep, take heart that your modern sensibilities regarding dinner are most graciously intact. The next time you venture into a restaurant and feel a twinge of indecision over the daily special, remember the resilient men and women of 1870s frontier life, peering suspiciously at a piece of meat so questionable it deserves a timeout in the corner. Ah, such simpler times, right? So, if you're going to wake up tomorrow, give thanks that your usual breakfast means turning the knob on your coffee maker and not fiddling with the salting technique of a meat product hoping to avoid dysentery. Bon appetit, my friend, and may your meals be ever in your favor. Chapter 14. The Perilous Stagecoach, a joyride into the heart of insecurity. Hey guys, welcome back to our mild-mannered jaunt through history. Tonight, we'll be chuckling our way through the perils of transit in the 1870s, an era that had you clinging to life on the back of a stagecoach like your last slice of pizza at a party with no more food options. Picture this. If you thought your morning commute was chaotic, just wait until you hop on a rickety wooden box barreling down a dirt road surrounded by potential outlaws who have more interest in your belongings than ensuring you get to your destination. But before we dive into our comedic time travel, why not give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying this? And hey, subscribe, but only if you actually appreciate our blend of humor and absurdity. Dim the lights. Crank up that fan like you're summoning a gentle breeze in an 1800s tavern, and make yourself cozy. Let's ask ourselves some important questions. What would you do if asked to defend your dignity with nothing but a plucky shovel and a wild sense of adventure? Would you risk your life for a biscuit and a cup of coffee? What about sharing a cramped space with a gang of snoring travelers who might mistake you for a moving target? And oh, imagine addressing each other as "Sir," while secretly regretting every decision that brought you here. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the Wild West of the 1870s, where stagecoaches hurtling down dust-laden roads are the deluxe experiences of their time. Strap in, because this journey is bound to be bumpier than a family reunion after too many helpings of Grandma's mystery casserole. Let's talk about that stagecoach. Not just any stagecoach, mind you, but the kind that looks like two planks of wood slapped together with dreams of getting you from point A to point B without splintering your spine. The air is thick with dust. How thick, you might ask? It's the kind of dust that makes you feel like a character in a low-budget Western film, squinting like you just took a whiff of last week's unwashed laundry. Inside, the atmosphere is tense. The smell of leather mixes with the earthy scent of panic, and you have this overwhelming urge to hold your belongings tightly, like a toddler with their beloved blankie. With you, there are fellow passengers, probably a family of rugged gold miners, each of them eyeing newcomers suspiciously, as if you were trying to swipe their last piece of jerky. You glance around, taking inventory of what might actually be a scene from Survivor, Frontier Edition. There's a stout man with a mustache that looks like a bush lost a bet. A woman clutching a child who could be a contender for the youngest outlaw in training. And a gentleman in the corner, staring into his hat like it's a crystal ball, hoping it reveals a path to safety. Suddenly, without warning, a gunshot echoes in the distance. Cue the nervous laughter, the kind of jittery cackling that happens when you realize your dinner plans just might involve a shootout instead of a quaint little bistro. And here you are, rocked like a rag doll, while wondering if your modern body could endure even a tenth of the turbulence this life offers. Well, folks, you hear someone mutter, "It's a good day if our wagon doesn't end up being an all-you-can-eat buffet for bandits." Security? Sorry, not in the budget for your ride across the frontier. The native Wild West promise was ride alongside danger with a side of more sweat than anyone should face in a lifetime. Now, let's not forget the notion of politeness in the Wild West. As the coach rattles along, you're bombarded with awkward exchanges with fellow passengers. Between the occasional crack of the whip and the creaking wood, you exchange thoughts on life choices. Well, I chose to be here, didn't I? At least my horse hasn't staged a revolt yet, you might say, stifling a chuckle as a particularly bumpy bit of road jostles you. Of course, Every suspected outlaw who freezes in a position that rivals a deer caught in headlights sends a chill down your spine. Did they break into your stagecoach just to chat? Or are they more of the let's steal your things while you reminisce about modern conveniences type? The tension is thick enough to slice with a rusty spade. And there's the toll of relentless bumps. Each jarring movement makes you feel like you just took a tumble down a not-so-friendly hill. Ever tried following along with wild conversation while being shaken like a salad in a wooden bowl? It's less about focusing on your neighbor's thoughts on gold mining and more about contemplating how bruised your body will feel once you arrive. Finally, after what feels like a 3-day trek through the adventures of discomfort, your stagecoach rolls into town, both a relief and a disappointment. As you step out, stiff as a board and slightly dustier than a sack of potatoes, you realize something deeply profound. You're not just tired, you're part of the legacy. A legacy filled with wild laughter, questionable choices, and tales to spin over evening fires. Such was the nature of travel in the 1870s frontier. Chaotic, unpredictable, and as entertaining as finding out your favorite ice cream shop is now a pharmacy. But worry not, you made it through. And next time you're stuck in rush hour traffic, just think, at least it's not a dusty road with the potential for lawlessness lurking behind every corner. And so, dear listener, as you close your eyes and drift into a peaceful slumber, know that you're lucky. Your modern comforts will still be waiting for you. No outlaws involved. Good night, and sweet dreams of gentle rides through the quiet countryside. Or maybe just a nice bubble bath, ideally without the threat of bandits. Chapter 15. The Solitary Vigil, a Midwestern miss in a pillbox of isolation. Hey guys, welcome back to our serenely ridiculous explorations into the annals of history. Tonight, we warm up to something slightly grimmer than last week's discussion about stagecoaches. The isolated life of a woman in a sod cabin back in the 1870s. Picture your diagnosis of mild claustrophobia, but add a dash of isolation, a sprinkle of prairie madness, and a hefty dollop of questionable sanity. It's the perfect recipe for a long period of self-reflection about how one just might lose their marbles over a few too many cabin fever days with only a single potato for company. Before we begin our hilarious tumble down the rabbit hole of pioneer pressure, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And hey, subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this wacky blend of historical hilarity and cozy absurdity. Now, let's turn that cozy up a notch. Dim the lights, fire up a fan to summon a gentle prairie breeze, and wrap yourself up like a burrito in a warm, soft blanket. Because comfort is key when we dive headfirst into the life of a Midwestern woman catching some serious cabin crazes. So picture this. What would you do if your only social interaction for days on end was with your cat, who holds silent judgment over your cooking skills? Or if your idea of gourmet was a day-old biscuit? Ever tried creating a floral arrangement using nothing but wild prairie flowers and a rogue cactus? How about choosing between personal hygiene and rationing water for soap for a month? Note, it's always a bad idea to skip bathing, folks. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1870s, staring out of a tiny window of your snug sod cabin, the walls composed of earthy bits and pieces, and possibly the souls of previous inhabitants. Welcome to the rustic life of a solitary homesteader, where only the desperate chirps of a lone bird break up the sound of your own thoughts, echoing back at you like an uncourageous mirror. Let's set the scene. The air is crisp, and while that may sound poetic, it also means every breath feels like a joyless encounter with a freezing wind. You can hear the occasional whistle of that same bird, which you've affectionately named Squawkerson, as he flaps by with an air of freedom you can only dream of. Do you ever envy a bird for just being able to take off where they please? You could use a quick escape right about now. Perhaps a hot air balloon powered by the sheer force of your desire to never see another sod-stained wall. Your view is filled with endless stretches of grass, practically shouting, "Don't mind me. I'm just here to remind you of your isolation." And why is it that the vastness of the prairie feels so claustrophobic? You shrug that thought off with a sip of your cold coffee from 2 days ago. Lovely. An elegant sludge swirling with flavors of despair. Inside the cabin, your furniture consists of a rickety table that was probably pilfered from a pioneer version of IKEA. Sure, it looked good in theory, but in practice, it's a creative study in bad carpentry. Every piece of furniture sways like a tipsy ballroom dancer, and the chairs seem to have deep discussions about their own structural integrity each time you sit down. There are stories waiting to be told, but alas, none of them include anyone remotely fun. You turn your gaze towards the shelves, or rather, the shelf, singular, the only one crammed with whittled knickknacks, each one slowly gathering dust like your ambitions of socializing. You ponder picking one up. Is that a miniature gopher you carved? Why, yes it is. And look at him. He's judging you. And he isn't the only one. That collection of dusty jars is silently chastising you for hoarding extra beans like a squirrel anticipating winter. It's all quite tranquil, if tranquil meant discovering the depths of your psyche amid a slow descent into the motives behind your daily snacking habits. You contemplate writing a novel, perhaps a thriller called The Cabin of Unfinished Biscuits, starring you as the protagonist with all the agency of a particularly lazy tumbleweed. Will there be groundbreaking plot twists? Probably just a series of wild haikus about the beauty of stubborn weeds that refuse to die or go away. Then there are the chirps of the occasional critter scratching around outside, making you consider for a fleeting moment whether a family of raccoons is plotting an insurrection. I'll defend my potato supply with a garden hoe, you band of furry thieves. The internal drama is riveting, if not completely bizarre. But hey, it's better than spending another hour playing the guessing game of just how many dusty layers are living on your furniture. Now, let's talk about dinner. You open up your pantry, more like an exercise in panic as you stare at the remnants of last week's meal prep. Ah, the friendly potato, the foundational cornerstone of every homesteader's diet. You reach out, unsure if it's still safe to eat. The potato looks back at you, possibly bruised but full of untapped culinary potential. Tonight's thrilling menu? Mashed potatoes, but with the added challenge of contemplating your life choices while mashing them. So, here you are, a lone pioneer woman, embracing your solitude with a side of grim humor. You could be out gathering with the prairie folk, or perhaps riding off to a grand social event, but instead, you're knee-deep in exploration of your own mind. Always a riveting journey, indeed. As you close your eyes and drift into a calm slumber, remember, even while navigating the tricky waters of solitude, you are not alone. For at least in this playful narrative,
The gopher is here to stand by you, reminding you to embrace the beautiful chaos of your uniquely ordinary existence, just with way better snacks. Good night.
Chapter 16. The Leaky Roofs and the Rainy Blues. Living in a 1870s frontier cabin. Hey guys, welcome back to our journey through the historic hilarity that is the Wild West. Tonight, we find ourselves knee-deep in a proverbial puddle. Actually, let's be honest, it's a literal puddle. Picture this. It's pouring rain, and your homesteader aspirations drench into the ground along with your dreams of gourmet dining. Yep, that's right. Welcome to the 1870s frontier, where the roofs are less about shelter and more like a friendly game of will it or won't it leak? Spoiler alert, it will. Before we meander into the melodrama of leaky roofs and questionable hydration practices, give this video a thumbs up. And hey, if you find yourself chuckling into your pillow, we would love for you to subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy this mildly chaotic mix of history and absurdity, of course. Now, go ahead and dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that authentic prairie breeze and snuggle up in your warm but decidedly non-sod-clad blanket. Because boy, are we diving into rustic living at its soggy, chaotic best. Now, let's ask ourselves a few pivotal questions. How do you finesse a glass of water when your roof is auditioning for the role of the Great Dripper? Have you ever considered how many buckets you would need to stack around your cabin to catch every drop? And really, what's it like to look at a perfectly fine potato and realize it's your only source of dinner because moisture from the roof is ruining everything? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870s, and your body wouldn't last a day on the soggy frontier. So here you are, standing inside your humble abode, which is generously defined as a cabin. Roof? More like a series of unfortunate holes, skillfully designed to funnel the rain straight onto your floor. The first drops are like a symphony of despair, bouncing off the wooden beams and plopping right into those mismatched buckets you scavenged from your last trip into town. Half are metal, half are probably thingamajigs your neighbor gave you just to clear out his shed. It's a beautiful collection of collected desperation. You may be wondering what's happening on the other side of those leaky walls. Every so often, you hear a loud thwack against the wood. Undeterred by the drenching home front drama, it's your neighbor attempting to patch their own leaky roof, using nothing but imagination and whatever can be found in the vicinity, which typically involves various animal parts and perhaps a rogue tumbleweed or two. As you stifle a laugh, a droplet hits your cheek. It's both gross and oddly poetic, your reality manifesting like a tragic ballad about rain and isolation. And now you have a decision to make. Do you dare to drink the rainwater pooling at your feet? Or do you cringe away from it because clearly something fell from the sky that shouldn't be a part of your diet? It's also a rather mysterious shade of brown. Let's discuss this little chemistry project you call drinking water. The concept of having clear, cool water is a dream that you might entertain while watching those drips form a fountain of questionable hydration. However, as you sip from your cooking pot, the last bit of flavored abyss from last week's potato adventures. You can't help but appreciate that it's certainly quenching. Is it flavor? Or is it merely an existential reminder of how life has led you to this moment of soggy potato stew and a directly unsourced liquid you're forced to call water? And don't even get me started on personal hygiene. You're already rationing the last drops for washing your socks, so when was the last time you washed yourself? Let's just say that any onlooker might have a moment of clarity and yell, "You smell like you've been living in a bucket," which you kind of have, if we're being honest. You chuckle at the irony. Here you are, confined in a home where the spirit of adventure beckons outside. Yet iambic pentameter seems to have left your life along with the soap. Nothing speaks volume of your rustic existence quite like your potato collection. Somehow, they've taken on a personality of their own. A little bruised, a little sprouted, and with the flavor profile of a 24-hour gym sock. But they're the backbone of your dinner table. Quite literally, considering it's just a rough-hewn plank over two wobbly stools that could easily double as torture devices. Now, we all know evening can be a metaphorical curtain for the glories of frontier escapism that you desperately cling to like a cat with a recently shorn to-do list. You stare out through the rain-soaked window with dreamy eyes, pondering if tomorrow you'd finally have a hot meal, or just more good-natured moisture tapping at your skull while you tried to sleep. In this melodrama of imperfect architecture and incredibly dubious hydration practices, just know you're part of something greater. A pioneer who knows the essence of improvisation, as they let out a soggy chuckle. The next time you cringe at the rain hitting your car window, or feel a sprinkle on your nose, remember you could be slogging through a cabin filled with buckets that seem oddly more like puddles than practical containers. So as you shift into slumber, embraced by the haunting and oddly comforting sounds of rainfall, acknowledge the absurdity in your surroundings. There may be water dripping down onto your head, and potatoes watching your every move. But tonight, you're a conquering homesteader, navigating the waves of adversity. Good night. Good night. Chapter 17. Mining Misadventures and Cave-Ins. Life down below in the 1870s frontier. Hey guys, welcome back to our whimsical wanderings through the Wild West, where it's somehow still too dangerous to make toast without risking a minor explosion. Tonight, we're shimmying down into the depths of an underground hard rock mine. Picture it. You're surrounded by unstable rock formations, more temperamental than a toddler without their nap, and the air is thick with the delightful aroma of toxic gas fumes. Add to that the constant threat of your next moment being a tragic mountain-wide disaster. Sounds fun, right? Before we throw on our heavy boots and wander deeper into this underground escapade, give this video a thumbs up. And if you find yourself giggling into your pillow over this treacherous adventure, please consider subscribing. Only if you genuinely find this mildly ridiculous romp through history enjoyable, of course. Now, reach for that dimmer switch, crank it down to spooky mine entrance, turn on a fan for that cool subterranean breeze, and snuggle deeper into your cozy blanket. Because we're about to embark on a journey more precarious than a barrel full of monkeys swinging from chandeliers. Let's start asking ourselves some existential questions. Ever wondered what it's like to work in a place where every creak of the floor feels like it's auditioning for a role in a horror movie? How would you handle the pressure of always feeling a little trapped? And not in the "this date is going terribly" sense. Can you imagine sweating so profusely in a mining helmet that the only thing holding it on your head is sheer desperation? And how would you interpret the phrase, being one with nature, when nature has a way of collapsing right on top of you? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870s frontier, where your modern body would stand out like a cactus at a beach party. So here you are, elbow deep in a muddy tunnel. Flashing your flickering headlamp around feels like you're starring in an underground dance-off, but the only moves being made are by your fellow miners dodging collapses and gas vapors. The sound around you isn't music, but the relentless chatter of rocks that have sworn an oath to fall at the most inopportune moments. Think of it as an extreme team-building exercise, where the prize is your very survival. It's like corporate retreats, if they involved explosives and the potential for burial. Now let's talk about your dinner companions. You've got your buddies, each one of whom looks like they need a solid nap and a decent bath. But you also have a collection of luminous rocks aimed at making your shift feel bright. It's practically a glow party in there. But instead of EDM, you're vibing with the rhythmic sound of hissing gases. Great for working up a sweat or, losing consciousness. Sorry, no return policy on that last one. Work hours meld into hours that feel like a Gilligan's Island episode gone awry. You spend your time chomping on hardtack, the only form of sustenance guaranteed to create a mouth more arid than your grandma's Thanksgiving turkey. Finding a snack down there is less of a scavenger hunt and more of an archaeological dig. Oh, what's this? A piece of last week's bread? Looks like it's evolved with a new species. Bon appetit. Somewhere in this mine, you may stumble upon cave-ins, the unsettling phenomenon that's less a natural event and more an enthusiastic invitation from Mother Nature herself to give up on life. Imagine your very own dramatic moment thinking, this is one way to meet the floor. A thrill ride indeed. Workers tended to think of these as unavoidable life interruptions. Yes, that's right. Acting more as an inconvenience than a potential home makeover. Life outside the mine might be problematic, but down here, it's an adventure. You'll find yourself whispering absurd survival strategies in your worn boots, thinking, if I dodge that falling rock, I'm basically a superhero. But let's face it, if you end up buried under an avalanche of tiny crushed rocks, you might just get a visit from the great Grim Reaper himself, who honestly, you have to feel a little sorry for. Chatting with you would be right off his bucket list, one he didn't even want to appear on. Now let's discuss ventilation. Vital for survival, yet persistently lacking. Miners relied on primitive methods that mostly involved waving your arms around and hoping the fresh air would somehow find its way in. It's like hoping that your favorite song appears on the radio, but infinitely more desperate. Ever been stuck in an elevator? Multiply that by 100 and throw in a couple of gas explosions, and you'll get a feel for it. By day's end, you trudge out of the mine looking less like a rugged worker and more like a walking disaster area. Dirt under your nails? Check. The scent of despair, but with earthy undertones? Double check. And breathing in the possibility of impending doom? Absolutely. Just another day in the mines. So while you snuggle down into your plush bedding tonight, remember that you're not battling cave-ins, toxic gas, or hardtack drama at every turn. Rest easy knowing those adventures are reserved for the brave folks of the 1870s frontier. As you drift into slumber, let the absurdity of their struggles roll over you like a gentle lullaby. After all, their life might have been a minefield of calamities, but hey, at least you're cozy, right? Good night. Chapter 18. The Rivers of Peril. Don't get your wagon wet. Hey guys, welcome back to this soft, sleepy soiree of mildly interesting historical mischief. Kind of like discovering a sock in the dryer that doesn't match any of your shoes. Tonight, we're floating into a saloon of a tale that's splashier than a cat in a bathtub. The 1870s frontier and the not-so-glamorous art of crossing rivers. Picture this. You've got a wagon packed tighter than a Christmas ham, a team of oxen snorting like they were auditioning for a role in a barnyard musical, and you're about to embark on a water-crossing adventure that would make even the most adventurous fish raise an eyebrow. Now, before you jump into this river of uncertainty, let's take a moment to soak in a few absurd thoughts, shall we? Ever tried rowing a canoe while blindfolded and one-handed? How would you feel if the only flotation device you had was an overly ambitious potato sack? What does it really mean to get your feet wet when your entire wagon is teetering on the edge of disaster? And let's not even discuss the livestock, because who wouldn't want to hear their cows have an existential crisis halfway through a river crossing? Congratulations! You've just woken up on the banks of a wide, treacherous river in the 1870s. The sun glares down upon you while the water bubbles and churns as angrily as a toddler denied a cookie. The wagon train is ready to spring into action, like a game of oversized dominoes waiting for someone to push the first one over. But here's the catch. This river is not what it seems. It's less tranquil stream and more nightmare waiting to happen, filled with swirling currents that would wash your worries away, along with your entire wagon if you're not careful. Let's set the scene, shall we? You're standing on the muddy bank, the smell of wet earth mingling with the whiff of the river, which is distinctly less inviting than your grandmother's cookie jar. The rhythmic sound of water crashing against rocks fills the air, not unlike an out-of-tune band practicing a new type of folk music. Every now and then, a cow moos apprehensively from the back, likely debating whether they'd prefer a swim or a peaceful life of grazing. Spoiler alert, cows are not big fans of water. As you prepare to cross, the wagon lurches forward with a groan, its wooden wheels shrieking like a toddler whose Legos just got stepped on. You glance nervously at the precarious cargo. Barrels of supplies, bags of flour, and an assortment of livestock. Let's be honest, your modern body would be clutching its proverbial pearls. You'd probably be yelling existential questions at the sky like, "Why is this happening?" and "What did I do to deserve this soggy fate?" As the wagon edges closer to the churning water, you feel a deep sense of foreboding, not exactly what you'd call a calming sensation as you're about to trust a wooden cart and a couple of very confused oxen to perform the aquatic waltz. Are they even trained for this? You half expect them to start wrestling over who gets to take the lead, like it's some dramatic animal showdown. In you hop, heart racing faster than a Labrador chasing a squirrel, pretending you're on an aquatic version of The Amazing Race. As the first wheel hits the water, an array of splashes erupts like a poorly timed fountain show. It feels more like getting splashed by a giant rubber duck than a heroic crossing. The wagon sways dangerously, sending that awkward jolt straight to your stomach. If you weren't paying attention before, now you're awake enough to solve complex math problems in your head. The water rises, lapping hungrily at the sides of the wagon, and all of a sudden, the oxen decide they've had enough of this foolishness. They dig in their hooves, panic in their eyes like they just realized they borrowed money from the wrong poker buddy. The wagon rocks perilously, nearly capsizing like a circus clown trying to juggle on a unicycle. Your eyes dart left and right, catching fleeting glimpses of fellow travelers already regretting their life choices as they cling desperately to their hats, baskets, and any semblance of dignity left. Your heart pounds as the wagon sways further, a wooden dance that evokes all the elegance of a hippo on roller skates. With every inch that passes, you wonder how many more barrels of supplies you'll lose to the raging river. Or more importantly, how many of your neighbors watching from the safety of dry land will capture this moment for eternity as the most amusing gossip of the year. Suddenly, one of the wheels hits a submerged rock, sending the entire wagon tilting sideways, as if someone decided it was party time at SeaWorld. Water floods in, and you brace for impact, channeling your inner lifeguard as you pull on ropes, steer the oxen, and mutter prayers to all the gods of trekking and vegetable farming. You can practically hear the fish chuckling at your expense, so buoyant in their element, free from the worries of prairie life. But then, miraculously, the wagon rights itself. The oxen, though no longer keen on impressing anyone, plod forward, splashing through the silty depths, while you cling on like a caffeinated koala. You finally surge onto the opposite bank, breathing a sigh of relief that could easily float a small boat. A sense of victory washes over you, or perhaps it's just the river water that's now infiltrating your boots. So as you wrap your mind around the notion that the cattle is still mooing, and you haven't been tossed headfirst into the murky depths, let's take a moment to appreciate how absurd and precarious this excursion has been. After all, nothing says life on the frontier quite like a comedic attempt to cross a river crazier than any video game level you've played. As you settle into bed tonight, remember that while your modern conveniences might not give you much excitement, at least you aren't risking life and limb battling raging currents while trying to keep a wagon and its cargo dry. Drift off with the serenity of knowing that as many trials and tribulations await, none will compare to floating with a wagon on the water. Unless, of course, you find yourself in a slow-moving line at the grocery store. Good night. Chapter 19. The Oregon Trail, America's longest graveyard. Hey guys, welcome back to this sleepy soiree of mildly interesting historical escapades, like finding a $5 in the pocket of that jacket you haven't worn since 2012. Tonight, we're about to embark on a journey that's longer than those interminable Thanksgiving dinners with your in-laws. Yes, we're diving into the Oregon Trail, the America's longest and most tragic game of Will We Make It? Picture this, a dusty path stretching endlessly, marked by makeshift crosses and stone markers. The visual reality of a graveyard that looks much like your friend's New Year's resolution to eat better, full of promise, but often disappointingly failed. Before we pack our dreams of exploration, and perhaps a few pitiful provisions, let's think of the absurdity ahead. Have you ever tried finding your left shoe in the morning when you're already running late? Now imagine doing that every day while dragging a few 100 pounds of supplies across the wilderness, trying to keep your oxen motivated without resorting to motivational podcasts. What if the wild animals really were just activists trying to save their woods from you? Congratulations! You've just woken up on the dusty trails of the 1870s. The sun bears down, beating on you like your alarm clock when you press snooze for that third time. There's a sense of adventure in the air, mingled with the unmistakable whiff of dried sweat, unwashed clothing, and maybe even a hint of desperation. The aroma of life on the Oregon Trail. Let's talk about this iconic trek, shall we? The Oregon Trail was more than just a route. It was basically the Wild West's version of a themed obstacle course. You've got hundreds of wagon trains rolling along like an all-you-can-eat buffet of bad decisions and questionable choices. Each mile you cover is marked not just by your triumphs, but by the ghostly echoes of those who didn't make it. Think about it. Your modern sensibilities would be clutching your smartphone in horror. What do you mean there's no Starbucks for miles? What do I do without my overpriced pumpkin spice latte? Now, as you stagger beneath the weight of all your provisions, barrels of flour, bags of beans, and perhaps an assortment of questionable livestock, your mind races. How do these people endure the daily grind of wagon life? Do they have hope, or just a really good sense of humor? Do you think there's an underground society of people trading "I survived the Oregon Trail" t-shirts? Spoiler alert, there probably should be. As your wagon lumbers on, you're assaulted by a cacophony of noises, creaking wood, the snorts of your mildly stressed oxen, and the occasional bantering from fellow travelers as they bicker about the merits of cornbread versus hardtack. These conversations are riveting, of course, like a soap opera with unwashed actors. You happen to find yourself caught in the middle of one such debate, while a child nearby whines about being hungry for the third time that hour. Every trekker here knows this refrain, primal, foreboding, and echoing through generations as if their family's very legacy depended on it. Now you're at a river crossing, and before you lies a waterway churning with such determination it could staff a toddler's swim class for months. The wooden wheels of your wagon creak ominously, as if they're questioning their own life choices. And you're suddenly aware that crossing this river would be the ultimate metaphor for shit happens. Imagine hoisting your belongings aboard, praying fervently that everything will make it, only to glance down and watch your sack of beans tumble out, floating in the current like a sad little boat of fail. If only you could find a paddle and channel your inner dancing with the stars as you attempt to paddle your wagon across. After all, you'll need more than a prayer. Should you be wearing a life jacket? Wait, that doesn't exist yet. As you dip into those murky waters, you can feel the current tugging at your ankles. It's like standing in a very aggressive dance-off where your body is determined to lose. Each splish and splash serves as a reminder that nature is about to show you who's boss. Will the wagon stay afloat? Will the oxen become waves' new best friends? You plow on, half hoping to emerge victorious, and half convinced you'll become a new local legend, the owner of the first aquatic wagon in history. Eventually, with one final dramatic sway, you manage to tread those waters like a circus performer, triumphantly reaching the opposite shore. You'd think you'd just won the lottery, except you've merely earned a glorified eye roll from the local flora and fauna, which, let's face it, is way less rewarding. So as you lay your head down tonight to rest, remember that while your Netflix queue might be overflowing with cozy dramas, none can compare to the slapstick comedy of life on the Oregon Trail. A grand saga where the biggest obstacles are often just a muddy river and questionable wagon support. Drift off with the whimsical knowledge that adventuring in the 1870s meant rugged survival, questionable culinary choices, and laughing through the grand misadventures of wagon life. Good night. Good. Chapter 20. Napping on the Range, a cowpoke's life. Hey guys, welcome back to our sleepy little adventure, where the history is so wild it could almost qualify as a Netflix series, complete with cowboys and slightly questionable life choices. Tonight, we're slipping into the dusty boots of a young cowboy who's just finished a grueling 20-hour workday on a cattle drive, and oh, let me tell you, it's about as appealing as a moth-eaten saddle blanket. So, if you're ready to explore the Wild West, a time when men wore pants that were tighter than your last pair of Spanx, let's get cozy. Dim the lights. Turn on a fan. For ambience, of course. And make sure you're appropriately sprawled out as if you just found the comfiest nook at a bookstore cafe. Yes, I understand. You've been out gallivanting all day and now you just need to sleep. But wait, ever wondered how it feels to spend an entire day just trying to get a cow that apparently has a PhD in running away? Or how achievable it is to nap in a saddle while trying not to become an unintentional pancake? Spoiler, it's not very achievable. You've now settled in comfortably, and the different scents of dried leather, sagebrush, and something that reminds you of an old sock, is it the saddle or the cowpoke, fill your nostrils. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1870s on a cattle drive, where the sun is relentless, the workdays are longer than most sitcom episodes, and the pay might as well be Monopoly money. Picture it. You're on horseback, dreaming of a cold drink, maybe lemonade or something equally refreshing. But the only refreshing thing around is a plume of dust kicked up by a herd of cattle. That's right. You're in the midst of a veritable stampede of mooing machines, while you cling to your horse like it's the last piece of furniture afloat in a flood. The sun beats down, hotter than a freshly roasted cactus on a July afternoon as you try to stay awake. Let's take a minute to imagine the joys of a cattle drive. You and your fellow cowhands are trotting along, and you can hear the insistent jangle of gear and the occasional "Whoo, boy!" echoing through the air. The only thing more intoxicating than your longing for a nap is the insistently scratchy sensation of a saddle sore forming. Ever tried to have a deep thought while something feels like it's trying to turn you into modern art? Yeah, it's like a really stubborn burrito, but in this case, the burrito is trying to burrow into your backside. To make matters worse, as your eyelids grow heavier than a bucket of rocks, your trusty steed has the audacity to get distracted by a passing butterfly. 1 second you're half dozing, blissfully dreaming of cotton candy clouds, and the next you're jolted awake, praying your horse isn't about to make a tragic decision akin to jumping off a slight incline because of a colorful insect.
Nature's version of hold my beer. And just
Like that, you're suddenly required to show an alarming level of creativity. You can either hang on tighter or risk falling off, landing in the dust like one of those skittish cows you were supposed to be herding. It's the type of moment where the only thing you can remember is the slapping sound of boot against meat, your butt meeting earth. And in this dusty tableau, there's only room for one cowboy to have a poker face, and it's not going to be you, my friend. While holding onto the reins, you're engaged in a celebration of questionable smells and even more questionable company. A band of rough-and-tumble cowpokes who enjoy teasing you about your lack of riding finesse. Hands smeared with sweat and dust, they hurl complaints and jokes alike, some of which could make an onion's cry. Ever find it tough to appear rugged and competent when you've just smeared your face with what can only be described as a layer of trail dust mixed with the essence of, I'm totally going to sleep as soon as I can? It's almost impossible. Finally, after another grueling hour that feels like it was brought to you by a medieval torture chamber, you dip into that long-awaited moment of tiredness, a fever dream where nap time meets cattle wrangling under an unforgiving sun. You lean forward, resting against the saddle, a charmingly deflated cowpoke just longing for the sweet embrace of oblivion. You realize that your compatriots potentially view you as the leading expert in napping while balancing on horseback. Surely, this is a career milestone, right? But in the end, sleep claims you like a warm blanket on a brisk winter's night, and the resonance of cowboy life, clanking boots, the cheerful moo of cattle, the discordant laughter of your pals, drifts into an almost lullaby-like tune, wrapping around you like the finest wool blanket sewn by your long-lost grandmother. In a world where you could be a legend or a punchline, you've chosen to nap like one. After all, what's more heroic than a cowboy who knows the true value of rest amidst chaos? As you drift off under a sky painted with an orange sunset, it hits you. This life may tire you out, but the stories you won't remember will last longer than the wrinkles forming on your youthful face. Hold on to that dream, partner, because it's undoubtedly one wild ride out there on the frontier. Now rest easy, dear traveler, and let the humor and absurdity of cowboy life wash over you like a gentle breeze through the prairie grass. Good night. Good night. Chapter 21. Roping Your Dreams Away. The Overlooked Cowboy. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of why did they think that was a good idea? Tonight, we're diving headfirst into something both heartwarming and hair-raising. The life of black cowboys in the 1870s Wild West. You know, those rugged individuals who roped steers as expertly as some of us handle our evening snacks. Except they didn't have the luxury of buttery popcorn to comfort them after a long day. So, grab your imaginary boots, adjust your cowboy hat, preferably one that doesn't smell like old horse, and let's set the scene. You might want to dim those lights, turn on a fan to simulate that oh-so-cozy prairie breeze, and snuggle up as we embark on this wild ride, filled with more twists than a lasso in a bullfight. Ever wondered what it feels like to be part of a workforce where only 25% of the cowboys looked like you? Or how it feels when every hero story seems to forget about you? I know, it's comically frustrating, like being invited to a party but finding out you're just the punchline. And let's not even start on the fashion choices. What's a cowboy to do when the only thing on sale is a pair of pants that could double as a personal sauna? But enough about the 21st century dilemmas. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1870s. Picture the sun peeking over the horizon, bathing everything in a warm glow. The kind that makes you feel like you've overslept, and that moving anywhere should be optional. You're on a sprawling ranch, surrounded by rolling hills and cattle that would rather stage a protest than cooperate. Now, let's step into the boots of a black cowboy, masterfully roping a steer. The morning air is crisp and thick with the smell of leather, hay, and... what is that? The unmistakable scent of a particularly determined cow. Your trusty steed, a majestic creature with more attitude than sense, stands patiently by, chewing on some hay as if contemplating its next life choices. Maybe it dreams of becoming a unicorn. Who knows? You look out over the vast landscape, and it's hard not to feel inspired. The sun's rays dance on the grass like children on a sugar high, while you prepare to demonstrate your lasso skills. But let's be real. You know it's going to be one of those days where expertly roping a steer feels more like trying to get your cat to take a bath. Ever tried that? Exactly. As you gather yourself, you can't help but notice the sheer lunacy of what you're about to do. There's something mildly hilarious about being a pioneer cowboy. Think about it. Where's the modern convenience of Starbucks? Or even a simple bathroom break? No, sir. Out here, it's you, your horse, and a whole heap of existential dread wrapped in steer-shaped packages. Now, you trot out, the ground crunching beneath your boots like a late-night snack you wish you didn't have. As you brandish your rope, cattle look on with the same level of judgment as that aunt, who only shows up for family reunions during the gift exchange. Oh, great. You can almost hear them think. Here comes trouble with a capital T. The first steer appears, apparently born with a PhD in avoidance, as it bolted faster than a toddler in a candy store while you chase after it. Oh, the joy. Pulled from the infinite wisdom of the cows, you decide to employ advanced psychological tactics. Maybe, if you distract it with a motivational speech about self-esteem, it would let you catch it. You're worth it, Sally. Life is more than just grazing. As your lasso sails through the air, you can almost hear the sound of astonishment from the other cowboys. But here's the kicker. Your rope misses the steer entirely, and instead captures a terrorized cactus that's just as confused as you are. You swiftly wonder if you've accidentally awakened a centuries-long feud between cowboys and wild vegetation. You can't make this up. Dirt builds up on your jeans, and somewhere in the cosmos, someone is cracking a dueling banjo joke you don't get. While at the ranch, you reflect on how society's idea of a heroic cowpoke often overlooks the contributions of black cowboys, who worked just as hard, if not harder, yet somehow ended up as mere footnotes in the pages of too many histories. So, you take a deep breath, steady your grip, and remember, every cowboy braves the elements, personal failures, and most crucially, social erasure. With increased determination, you finally rope that steer. Success. But maybe less with the flair of a rodeo star, and more like a gopher trying to give a motivational speech to a rock. Finally, as the ranch settles into a comfortable rhythm, You realize you're part of a legacy extending beyond the dusty plains. With laughter and camaraderie echoing through the air, it dawns on you. Being a cowboy isn't just about roping steers. It's about sharing stories, challenging legacies, and knowing that even the quietest voices can echo through time. With each laugh exchanged around the campfire, the spirit of those forgotten stories begins to weave itself back into history, creating a tapestry that you're now a pivotal part of. So as you settle into a long-held dream of whatever it is cowboys dream about, perhaps endless fields of corn and some supervillain cows plotting against you, rest easy, partner. In the unyielding heart of the Wild West, even a sleepy nod to history allows those once overlooked to shine bright. Sweet dreams, sweet dreams. Chapter 22. Explosive Labor. The Perils of the Pacific Railroad. Hey guys, welcome back to our favorite sleepless sanctuary. Why did they think that was a good idea? Tonight, we're diving into a story more explosive than that questionable burrito you regret ordering at 3 a.m. The life of Chinese railroad workers in the 1870s. These were the dedicated souls tasked with pushing the frontiers of America while dealing with conditions that make your last PowerPoint presentation feel like a day at the spa. So, grab your imaginary hard hat, adjust your safety goggles, the stylish ones without the scratches if you can find them, and settle in. You might want to dim the lights, crank up the fan to mimic that delightful mountain breeze, hopefully without the dry mud in your eyes, and snuggle into your favorite blankets, which are, undoubtedly, significantly more comfortable than the rough woolen tunics of the day. Ever wondered what it feels like to work with explosives that might be more unstable than your last relationship? Or maybe you've pondered how to stick a landing without safety nets. Well, these folks didn't have the luxury of thinking about it. They lived it. What's the proper attire for blasting through mountains? Denim or not dye? And picture this. Imagine being asked to wear the safety gear of a potato sack as you dig up dynamite. Yes, my friends, welcome to a world where half your brain is focused on the job and the other half is just wondering if this was the plan you signed up for. Congratulations. You just woke up in 1871, amidst the rugged beauty of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And no, those aren't the friendly sounds of birds chirping. Instead, it's the clang of picks and the unsettling rethink of your life choices as you realize you're about to be among the risk-takers, those brave enough to carve a path through mountains as if they were nothing more than stubborn mules underfoot. Feel that crisp mountain air. Breathe it in. If you can dodge the smell of sweat mingling with fear. Your fellow workers are a colorful crew, each with their unique backstory and a slightly melodramatic flair for the dramatic. The air is thick with ambition and the dust of a dozen laboring lives. And oh, what's that? Is that the smell of hot food? Nope. Just the burnt memory of last week's rations trying to escape before your next meal. Now, let's talk about the real heart-pounding action. The dynamics of blasting through mountains. Hey, who's ready to clear a path with our not exactly foolproof explosives? You hear someone shout, clapping together their hands as if hype alone can make this a good idea. You stand there, trying to look brave while secretly wondering if anything in your life choices ever involved a quit while you're ahead clause. As the ground rumbles beneath your feet, like it's auditioning for a role in a disaster movie, your stomach ties into knots. And not just from that weird stew. Picture yourself staring into the maw of a mountain, armed with nothing but a shovel and a flickering sense of doom. Absolutely thrilling, you whisper to yourself, though you might just break down into nervous giggles at any moment. The work is physically demanding, requiring a combination of brawn, careful planning, and a fair amount of luck, or, let's be real, a miracle or two. Because the only thing separating you from a crater is a $30 stick of dynamite, borrowed from a dubious source. Safety guidelines? They're about as reliable as your neighbor's cat during a thunderstorm. As you place sticks of dynamite into pre-drilled holes, oh yes, the historic thrill of "just trust us," you can practically hear your modern self screaming in disbelief. Is this second-hand space debris? You think about how many safety videos you've watched at work that emphasized protecting your toes and avoiding explosive situations, and chuckle at the stark contrast you find yourself in today. With a few pulls of a very old-fashioned detonator, one that looks like it might have been crafted by an over-retired blacksmith. You give a nod to your buddy next to you, who's nervously fidgeting like a cat on a hot tin roof. Boom! A cacophony of sound erupts, echoing off surrounding cliffs, while you wonder if this was indeed the moment, or just another Tuesday that'll end with a trip to the local Explosives History Museum a few decades early. Dust rises in plumes like anxious specters, and the ground shakes beneath your feet, reminding you that while this is just another day at work, anyone with a touch of sanity may have opted for a gentler route, like knitting or watching paint dry. But no, that's not who you are. You're here, and you're doing this, even if it means you'll someday be the punchline of a very dark joke about survival. If you think your last barbecue had a slight flare-up, just know that the aftermath of this labor isn't just cleanup. It's an "are we certain we didn't just break the universe" moment. And while your health and safety may be hanging precariously, along with that precarious pile of dirt, the camaraderie shared, the shared stories, and perhaps even the laughter amidst the chaos, create bonds that last much longer than any fleeting concern for personal safety. So with every accepted risk, every chuckle-tinged moment between explosions, you realize you're part of something greater than yourself, a merging of cultures, ambitions, and yes, absolute absurdity. As you breathe in the aroma of sweat, gunpowder, and an ever more distant vision of safety, let those moments weave into your dreams. Sweet whispers of history and legacy, rich with laughter, tell tales of perseverance that echo long after the last explosion has subsided. Chapter 23. The Juggling Act of a Pregnant Pioneer. Hey guys, welcome back to your snuggly little hole in the internet, where historical hilarity meets bedtime allure. Tonight, we're slipping into the world of the 1870s frontier, where life is about as relaxing as a long meeting scheduled at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Imagine this. You're a pregnant woman plowing a field, a tiny human strapped to your back like a very enthusiastic backpack, while sheep or goats, or let's be real, whatever squishes underfoot, wander in the background like they own the place. It's chaos, it's comedy. It's a scene that might just have you questioning your own life choices. So, stretch out, take a deep breath, preferably not a whiff of that distinctly farmyard odor, and let's dive into the blissful absurdity of frontier life. You might want to dim those lights a tad, set up a little fan to mimic the cool breeze of the prairie without the pesky dust getting in your eyes, and most importantly, find a cozy blanket, something significantly softer than what our heroine had to fight against on a daily basis. Ever pondered how on earth one might navigate the lovely combination of pregnancy and plowing? Or maybe you thought about crafting the perfect childcare strategy while simultaneously wrestling with unruly livestock. Sounds like the ultimate party game gone terribly wrong, doesn't it? Who needs a spa day when you can have the adventure of a lifetime? Equal parts sweat, laughter, and, oh yes, some serious backache. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1875 on the rugged American frontier. Oh, and spoiler alert, no one's coming to fetch you if you choose to take a nap. Imagine shaking off the sleep and stretching, only to find your very own child tied to your back, possibly about to launch a snack attack of sorts. And look, there's your trusty plow, repurposed as your best friend, maybe even your primary source of upper body exercise this trimester. Let's paint the scene. The warm sun casts a golden hue over a field that looks like it's attempting to grow something resembling dinner, but let's be honest, it's more like dinner's awkward cousin who shows up uninvited. The gentle sound of rustling leaves competes with the chorus of livestock murmurs. You can practically hear your goats negotiating the terms of their release and possibly plotting their escape, while your child is either babbling like a tiny historian or mere minutes away from a tantrum of epic proportions. Plowing with a bundle of joy strapped to your back? It's a bit like being asked to juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. Oh, you can handle it, people say. Just stay balanced and watch the plow. As if you're not already performing the maternal equivalent of a circus act. You'd probably even believe it was true if it didn't mean ducking under low branches while simultaneously figuring out how many more feet you can hope to plow without turning around to deal with what's happening on your back. And can we talk about body mechanics for a second? Trying to manage pregnancy is difficult enough without the added challenge of taming an unruly plow. If you think your last yoga class was a test of your flexibility, just wait until you find yourself reaching for that stubborn rock while contorting your body in ways that presumably should not occur during human activities. It's like attempting to master an exercise routine designed by someone with questionable neck and back pain experiences. Except, instead of relaxing breathing exercises, you're out here sweating through the grime of frontier life. Let's not overlook the fashion choices you made either, shall we? Forget that trendy maternity wear line. We're talking layers of rough wool, each piece more unyielding than the last, as you comb through products that emerge from farming endeavors. It's like wrapping yourself in a homemade burrito. Not as tasty as it sounds, and almost certainly less comfortable. Your husband might have promised you comfort, but clearly he mistook comfort for sheer survival. Each pull of the plow thrusts you into a different age-old dilemma, as you balance visceral labor with the ever-present fear of imminent childbirth. Because who wouldn't want to deliver a baby amid the lovely aromas of sweat and livestock? You've got your mind on pricey midwife services, while the frontier's answer involves a bucket of water and a shout for the nearest neighbor. Quick, grab Granny Agnes. The sheep have watched enough births to be part of the coaching staff. Ah, yes. And when you dare to take a moment to breathe, dare I say, a moment of bliss, there's little Timothy on your back, your perfect little alarm clock, fluttering his limbs as if he's helping you till the soil, while simultaneously devising a master plan for world domination. Honestly, the kid's a real pro at delusions of grandeur. Why not dream of owning the wheat field, right? Just find a way to keep it quiet for 5 minutes, Timmy, you plead, while your neighbors glare enviously at your agricultural talent. Your livestock loom, keeping a watchful eye on you, while resisting the urge to nibble at the edges of your dress. Clearly they're hoping to gain some kind of culinary advantage should you decide the dinner just can't be made without one of them going missing under less than suspicious circumstances. But here's the kicker. Cries of discomfort echo through the field each day, encapsulating a woman who is part warrior, part juggler, and all heart. With the joy of motherhood juxtaposed against the intensity of plowing, you realize life on the frontier isn't about perfection. It's about survival, laughter, and an utterly baffling sense of humor. So lean into that collective chaos while you dream. Let laughter linger in your dreams and stitch together a legacy that cultivates resilience stronger than even the rudest of plows. Sweet dreams, dear listen, as you drift away into a field of historical hilarity, where the mothers pave the way, one plucky plow pull at a time, pull at Chapter 24, Teachers, Tornadoes, and Totally Unruly Kids. Hey guys, welcome back to your cozy corner of the internet, where we slide into the odd and quirky like a cat on a freshly waxed floor. Tonight, we're taking a leisurely snooze through the frosty halls of a one-room schoolhouse in the 1870s frontier. Picture it, a tiny wooden structure, walls creaking like an old man trying to get out of a rocking chair after a hearty dinner of beans and questionable meat. Inside this glorious capsule of academia, a single overwhelmed teacher wrangles children aged 5 to 17 in a room that's colder than your aunt's attitude at Thanksgiving. But first, before we embark on this historical adventure, do me a little favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment, but only if you're actually into this nonsense, okay? Now, let's get comfy. Dim those lights. Kick on that fan, because, let's be real, you don't want to accidentally smell like old-school chalkboards. And snuggle into your blanket. I mean, if it's not soft enough to make a cloud jealous, are you even doing it right? How many of you have ever felt like you were suddenly the adult in a room full of kids? Ever tried to maintain your composure while Jack from second grade shows off his latest booger collection? Picture doing that while bundled in layers of wool as the bitter winter wind howls outside like a pack of angry wolves. Do you think teachers back then had any tricks for surviving a stacked classroom of age ranges? Or were they just drinking the last remnants of the coffee brewed before the invention of actual coffee? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1875. In a one-room schoolhouse where the heat source is effectively just optimism and prayer. As you blink away the snooze remnants of your comfortable mattress, you hear a cacophony of sounds. The faint rustling of pages, the distinct squeak of chalk as it struggles against a blackboard, and an occasional sneeze that sounds like it's witnessed the fall of Rome. Let's take a moment to absorb the scene. You open your eyes to a room filled with children who look as though they have collectively decided that sitting still is actually a crime. The wooden desks are cobbled together in a haphazard fashion, with names carved into the surfaces that would likely make a modern-day teacher weep, even more than their lunch inevitably going missing each day. The aroma of damp wool permeates the air, mixed with the smell of unwashed hair, and maybe a hint of something that should have never seen the inside of a snack. Your teacher, the brave soul standing at the front, wears a look that combines fascination with utter despair, as if they've just discovered that the bottle of glue they've been using is in fact a form of homemade weaponry. Now, class, they say, although in a room with ages as varied as the menu at a far too ambitious family reunion. Please, the next time I ask a question, can we not stand on our desks? Ah yes, there's young Billy, age 6, whose primary understanding of educational decorum seems to be derived from circus performances. One moment he's seated, the next he's conducting an interpretive dance that somehow involves the entire classroom. Let's just say learning in this scenario has taken on a whole new meaning. Absolutely every child is a distraction, and Billy has turned into an unlikely ringmaster. Picture yourself trying to explain long division while ensuring that the younger kids don't throw things at each other, all while keeping an eye on miracle-working 90-pound Emma, who has a habit of disappearing out the door faster than a wild rabbit. And if she's not disappearing, she's holding court as the lunchtime snack negotiator, a role she seems to take more seriously than any congressional session in recorded history. And about those winter days, it's like a scene from a post-apocalyptic film, where you're all huddled together, whispering about the likelihood of surviving a snowstorm, while simultaneously praying no one gets buried under a pile of woolly clothes and old hats. You'd better believe that the question on everyone's mind isn't just, what's the capital of Nebraska, but, are we going to survive this class? During winter, teachers relied less on technology and more on the age-old art of improvisation, because trust me, snowplows didn't exist yet. The classroom temperature barely cleared freezing, leaving pencils less like instruments of learning and more like popsicles from a lost era. Add on a few tantrums from the younger ones, and the honest truth that none of them have been properly taught to go to the bathroom. Talk about a recipe for disaster. As the children stand on their desks shouting, "I have to go," you have to be the adult in the room, while also trying to keep your sanity. And that's quite an uphill battle. Now let's talk about the chalkboard. Creating a lesson on geography isn't as simple as it sounds. First, you're scratching out the names of countries, while children are scrambling for an answer like it's a call to arms. England! No, wait, Arkansas! Billy shouts excitedly. You wonder if it's possible to set a world record for most incorrect answers. If only you could put that on your resume. And who can forget the punishment methods? Doing a light tap dance around the think corner for calling out the wrong answer seems more like a Broadway audition than a disciplinary measure. What happened to a little timeout? Imagine standing there, wearing the shame of making the principal's lunch the next day, while Billy eyes his chance. "I'll trade you my sandwich," Billy whispers, "if you let me out of the corner." By now you're probably wondering how anyone survived teaching in such conditions. But oddly enough, it wasn't just madness. It fostered camaraderie, confidence, and maybe a bit of chaos that built character. Children with the world as their classroom quickly learn to adapt, and that's likely the first life lesson they truly absorbed. If nothing else, living through those calculations felt like being part of some historical escape room, one that they wouldn't have voluntarily chosen to enter. And now we drift gently away from the trials of the humble one-room schoolhouse, where laughter blends with chaos in an extraordinary portrait of resilience. As you settle deeper into your dreams, may you find solace in the wild antics of the frontier classroom, a time where teachers could only hope for survival, and where history, like a slightly rebellious child, never quite sits still. Sweet dreams, dear listener, as you adventure further into the absurdity of life on the frontier, a time where education was just another adventure in survival. Chapter 25. Prairies, Pioneers, and Poignant Farewells. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're diving headfirst into something so bittersweet it makes dark chocolate look like a sugary cupcake. We're traversing the wide-open prairies of the 1870s Wild West, where adventure comes, served with a side of heartache and a sprinkle of dust. Imagine standing on an endless expanse where every blade of grass could tell tales more tragic than a soap opera marathon. Before we gallop deeper into this historical heartbreaker, do me a solid. Hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment, but only if you actually enjoy this delicious dish of absurdity. No pressure, though. Now, as we warm up for this journey, let's ask ourselves a few quirky questions. What do you think life was like for those brave families heading westward, armed with little more than a prayer and a wagon full of essential items, like several dozen jars of pickled cabbage? Ever wondered how they handled losing a loved one and still managed to keep moving like their favorite TV series just dropped a new season? Congratulations! You've just woken up pioneer style, on a brisk morning in 1875, with the sun firmly planted on the horizon, casting a golden hue over an unforgiving prairie backdrop. You blink awake, the smell of sweat, dust, and yesterday's beans lingering like an unwelcome house guest. It's a new day, and likely a new burden. All around you stretches the wide, wild prairie, a sea of green and gold swaying gently in the morning breeze. You're not just any settler. You're part of a caravan, a tightly knit group of souls on a mission. However, today, amid this open expanse stands something far more harrowing than a muddy trail or a missing cow. A small, unmarked grave of packed earth rests before you, not far from the wagon, whispering stories of heartache and loss into the chilly wind. In a life where mortality is as common as a tumbleweed rolling by, death isn't just feared. It's almost an everyday occurrence. Diseases that are preventable with a trip to the pharmacy, like a simple little thing we like to call hydration, have run rampant through your community. And here you are, standing over the grave of your child, a son perhaps, who succumbed to an ailment so banal, so avoidable, that it feels like the universe is purposefully trying to break your spirit. The parents you see appear tired, their faces weathered and depthless, like an old map of the trails they've traveled. They're standing resolutely, not so much with stoicism, but rather a weary acceptance, as if this has become part of the journey itself. It's almost poetic, tragically so, like a romantic movie where the protagonist is stuck missing the boat because they were caught in a melodramatic monologue. How do you process a loss like this while also keeping a family together? The question hovers between the spaces of your mind, like a pesky fly you can't quite swat. Not to mention the practicalities. How do I bury my child with dignity when I have exactly 3 rocks, 2 spoons, and a prayer to my name? It's less a farewell and more a logistical exercise in survival with a heart-wrenching twist. It's like trying to organize your sock drawer during a tornado. The connection between these parents isn't just emotional. It's raw and intricate, like a tangled ball of yarn after you let the cat loose. They're forced to balance grief with the immediate necessity to pack up their wagon, to hoist the children who are still alive into the back, and keep the journey going. Hey kids, remember when we lost little Johnny? Let's try to remember all the fun and totally not traumatic things he said before he opted out. Grab your tissues, folks, because it's not over yet. As they lay the first handful of soil upon the small grave, you can almost hear the whispers of their shared hope that this isn't just a testament to loss. It's also a solemn promise to the child's memory, an effort to hold on tight to love, even when it's dressed in the attire of sorrow. The prairie wind howls around them, sounding almost like a spectral accompaniment to their unspoken grief. Wow, this wind is as cold as the look I got from Grandma when I borrowed her favorite frying pan and forgot to return it, one of them might quip, if only to lift the weight of the moment. Because amid grief and loss, there's always room for a slice of humor, like a particularly well-timed joke at a funeral that somehow lands like a bomb, and everyone chuckles while holding back tears. And just like that, they've finished the unthinkable task thrust upon them. Yet, as they turn back to the wagon, you can hardly imagine what kind of mental gymnastics they're performing to carry on. Every step forward feels like pulling a boulder uphill. But in the wild spirit of Western settlers, they find a strange strength that ordinary people likely wouldn't possess. They've learned an essential lesson of survival, that life's harshest tests often come paired with an obligation to keep going, even if it feels absurd. So there you stand, confronted by the harsh and often unyielding realities of frontier life, the incredible beauty of the prairie juxtaposed with the overwhelming sadness of familial loss. But as you take a deep breath and inhale the dusty air, you somehow find yourself cheering them on from some ethereal corner of the universe. Because, let's be honest, life on the prairie is about resilience, humor, and a whole lot of heart. And remember, when you wake up from this little historical adventure, you might just carry a piece of their story with you. A gentle reminder of how humor and determination intertwine like 2 old friends at a potluck. You never know what you might find on your plate. As the sun rises higher, casting light on both the beauty and the grit of the wild frontier, we leave behind these Pioneering souls, humbled yet determined, as they set their eyes to the horizon. Because in the grand tale of the 1870s, tomorrow beckons like a fresh loaf of bread, golden and warm, though possibly lacking in a few functional ingredients. Sweet dreams here on the prairie, dear listener, as you journey through both laughter and loss, all beautifully entwined in the tapestry of history. And now, our journey through the 1870s frontier comes to a quiet close. You've survived smoky cabins, stubborn mules, frostbit mornings, suspicious breakfasts, saloon chaos, and frontier medicine that relied more on hope and whiskey than anything science would approve of. You've trudged through dust, shivered through winter drafts, and defended your boots from surprise wildlife ambushes. Somehow, in imagination alone, you earned your place among a world of people who woke every day to challenges we can barely comprehend, and somehow still laughed, loved, worked, and endured. Life on the frontier was never gentle, but the people were strong. Tough hands, tired backs, raw courage, and enough humor to get them through the absurdity of each day. They didn't have comfort. They had grit. And in the middle of struggle, they still found moments to sing, to share meals, to tell stories, and to hope for better. So as you rest here, warm, safe, clean and comfortable, take a slow breath and feel grateful for hot showers, soft beds, warm socks, pain medicine, and roofs that don't whistle winter wind through the cracks, for fresh food, running water, and the quiet hum of the modern world that takes care of so many things we never have to think about. Let your muscles soften. Let your breath slow down. Let the weight of today melt away like snow in spring sunlight. You made it through a day on the frontier, and thankfully, tomorrow, you get to wake up in the present. May your sleep be warm, peaceful, and gentle. May your dreams be light and kind. Good night, traveler. The frontier fades, and rest begins. Sleep well.